Hello, everybody. Um, Welcome this evening, starting on time as usual. I live in an island just off the East Coast, so technically 8 o'clock Eastern is 9 o'clock my time. That's how time works, right? Checking in with JaVale. I would like to invite everybody to the Franz Wagner stream, and I would like to invite um, Ben Pfeifer. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here to talk about Franz. It's a good evening.
Yeah, so tell me your priors with Franz.
Franz, I knew about him before his freshman year. Not too much. I think I caught him in FIBA, but didn't really have much of a take aside from that he was large and pretty smart and very young. That was always the thing I was aware of. And then, he was on my radar last year. Was a pretty good player his freshman year. Just a guy who I liked as a returner. And then, after my hiatus, coming back and watching Franz, and he's very good. So yeah, nothing crazy, but I've been aware of him for a couple of years.
Franz is really interesting to me because, I'm sure you've had this happen to you now. Is that like you are aware of somebody in passing and sort of have an idea of what they are, and then usually like a year or two down the line, you'll finally see them. Like I had seen Franz before FIBA and then FIBA. I was like, okay, I know what's happening here. So I didn't really pay attention his freshman year in Michigan. I wasn't like super zoned in, and then I kind of like went back and was like, wait, this is not the player I like remember or like really had a firm grasp on, because like I remembered him in FIBA being like just a shooter, like that was all he was, and that wasn't the experience I got his freshman year, and it certainly wasn't the experience this year. Um, and like to me, that's always fascinating when guys are different in different contexts. Um, so let's jump over to the film and let's talk about our themes for today. Um, so the first one is performative defense versus profound defense, and this is sort of a general idea, but I think Franz is a great way of talking about it. Is that like defense is a lot of times things that don't happen. Like I think a lot of Franz's best defensive plays or actions were just like the ball gets skipped, 3 or 4 times, and then a bad shot goes up, and it's an amazing defensive possession, but it doesn't show up in a way on a box score or through what we'd mostly consider counting stats. But it's a profound defensive possession because it forces the offense to adjust to him and adjust their game plan to like well executed help side. A performative defense is like a guy's jumps and blocks a shot. Like, does it change how an offense operates? Not particularly, but a well executed scheme does. Is this sort of scanning with your understanding of how Michigan's defensive scheme operates?
Yeah, I think Franz definitely has like some of those performative aspects in his game in a positive way. But yeah, I generally think he's one of the guys whose impact is often concealed unless you're watching really closely.
Yeah, I don't mean to say it as like some guys are performative, sometimes are like every play is a continuum, and oftentimes I have to cut up defensive film for a living now, and like a lot of times when you go to like best defensive highlight reels, it's just like a guy blocks a shot. Like, well, that's not really defense. Like he had a good closeout, but like a lot of times the defense is the parts you don't see. I just find him to be more on the scale towards execution than excitement, I guess is a way of putting it. The second one is a conversation I'm really excited to have, which is micro skills that make up the broad archetype of connectors. Are so I would say a connector is generally a label that players get when they don't really fit into a bunch of other archetypes. They're not a 3 and D guy. They're not a primary. They're probably not a secondary. Um, are there any skills, if you had to describe a connector, like little things that they do to somebody who either wasn't familiar or you were describing a prospect blind? Like what defines a connector to you?
I think the main thing that we think of is like literal connecting, like processing speed, passing, decision making. I think the prime examples that people cite are Lonzo, Halliburton now, guys who are very quick decision makers, process the floor quickly, and then as the kind of word says, connects maybe a primary to a shooter or a big by way of extra passes or secondary pick and rolls or hit aheads in transition. So that's, I think, the defining aspects of the connector in terms of actual gameplay to me. I mean, generally they can shoot. Often will have some sort of off-ball movement skill, whether it's cutting or relocation or just general spacing talent, screening, some play finishing. Yeah, that's what a connector is to me.
Yeah, I think that there's an idea there that I'm really excited to talk about, and that's space exploration. Like, we kind of think of them as cutters and as players who make little things happen, but to me it's more of cutting to an area and setting up angles and allowing for like little triangulation plays. So
yeah, Franz is great at that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to get to a lot of clips of just like, to me, there's a soccer comparison of the role of like Raumdeuter, which is like a space invader. But in basketball, like while it is an invasion sport, it's not quite the same thing. You're more trying to change the geometry of the court really quickly, and that's, to me, the thing that defines a connector. It's also like why it's hard to find them on like Bart Torvik queries or whatever. Is like, you can't just be like, you can't check the box that says changes the geometry on the court by their movement and understanding. The third one is, I think, a version of everyone's favorite question, which is if he shoots. And there's an assumption that you can go from shooting well to shooting well at volume, and that players may mechanically scale upwards, but their games may not. Like, some guys are never going to be comfortable shooting a Bones Highland amount of threes per 100. And this is partially a question about wiring. This is partially a question about positioning. Do you have just like a general rule of thumb when it comes to scaling up shooting volume or usage volume?
I think it depends on like shot types and role a lot. Where I think if a guy is obviously like playing a role down, or vice versa at his college sample, and the volume is skewed by that, whether he's a guy who can really shoot pull-ups in a connector role, something like that at the college level, then I think you can project the volume forward. But I think if a guy is playing the role that he's generally projected at, and the volume has either like been stagnant or regressed, and there's just not a lot of either pull-up or off movement versatility, then I tend to be wary, I'd say.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the fascinating questions, because I think if he shoots is the thing that generally applies to every prospect who isn't already a shooter. Because, like, I mean, you could sort of do a fun redraft where it's like, if every player shot at, I don't know, like a 34% level, like how would you play this draft out? But I think that the bigger challenge is having a guy who has a lot of indicators, but may not necessarily have indicators of where volume will come from. You have to kind of point to, this is a three that was passed up. Here was a bad shake where there could have been a three. Like, do they have the mentality to hunt? And not everybody does. There are guys who, can get up to like 38, 39, 40%, and they're just never comfortable like launching. And I find that to be a fascinating evaluation. The fourth one is something that we've talked about with Corey Kispert. We talked about to some degree with Evan Mobley, and that's balancing risk aversion and the ability to create. I think for Kispert, we called it taking more than what the defense gives you. That like everybody has their own internal, gyroscope for how much risk they're willing to take in a given situation, and trying to push the defense just a touch farther than they are comfortable. Franz at times like shows extremely real creation ability, and other times there's like open lanes that he just doesn't take, and figuring out whether it's a matter of where he catches the ball, if it's a matter of play type, or if it's a matter of spreading his usage out like through a game. Because I mean, some guys aren't comfortable using 4 possessions in a row. They're just wired to sort of feel for a great shot versus a good shot if they've taken 3. Do you have a like, either going into this or just as a prior a sort of idea of where you thought Franz would be?
Yeah, he definitely is way to me on the risk averse side, where not only with his like shooting and scoring, like I have plenty of my notes like just shoot the dang ball, Franz. Like Franz when he's wide open or has space where other guys who are worse shooters would shoot that, or just, like you said, not taking a lane. I think it also shows up for him as a passer as well, where he's just like, again, very risk averse, will avoid turnovers before he tries any sort of complex passes for the most part. I don't think that's always the case. I think Franz definitely flashes some more complex passing stuff, but generally I think he just plays a risk averse game, which isn't like inherently a terrible thing for his role, as we've kind of discussed before. But I think, there needs to be some like creation, like wiring there, like for any NBA player really. So
Yeah, and then the last one is I think my favorite thing to talk about here, which is defending from disadvantage. Franz, if you could boil every player down to like their truly special ability, Franz is that he's really good in 2-on-1s. Like it's not Danny Green 3-on-1 or 4-on-1 level, but like if you put him into really difficult situations, he is capable of like being comfortable in those situations and just trying to string out the ball handler or trying to string out the play type until he can, make an informed gamble. Like Sharif had a film room with Schmitz that I think released today, and he was talking about a pick and roll read from a tagger on the weak side, and he said the tagger waited a long time. I just waited a little bit longer. And Franz wins at these games of chicken over and over and over again. And this is a style of defensive creator that we're seeing more and more in the NBA today, is guys who are like, oh yeah, I'll be comfortable in help side. Like put me in the hardest decision. I want to cover ground. I want to be in these really high leverage situations. And we, at least for me in the film rooms that I've done, haven't seen a guy who's like hunted those situations and enjoyed them in the same way.
Yeah, it goes back to like the profound defense point we made at the beginning. Like ground coverage and like weak side tags and closeouts and X outs and stuff are so important in the modern NBA. Like it's just where the game has gone. Like forcing closeouts is the name of the game. Manipulating taggers and weak side defenders. And yeah, Franz is, besides having the functional tools to do it, he's so smart and just his positioning is great. And he, like you said, he wins those games. And he's just a very, very special team defender all around.
All right, so we are watching the at Wisconsin game. Michigan was hard to pick an average game for because they did stomp a lot of people out, which comes with its own evaluation problems. So I picked a game where they were in, I would say, close quarters for most of it. I think they trailed for quite a bit of this game. We're going to, I think a thing that jumps out immediately when you watch Michigan is just like the floor is so well spaced. That everybody is comfortable playing from good to great. If you've watched the summertime 5 Spurs, it's raised on that same mentality of we're hunting great shots. So when a defense is set up, the ball moves pretty quickly and they flow into something else. So here Dickinson catches it in the middle, they flow into a pick and roll, and Wisconsin's gonna half blitz. It's not a real blitz, but they're just trying to bring pressure. And you can see Franz really bellies out this pick and roll. He should, almost have 1 foot in the paint. Instead, he's out outside the 3-point line, and it causes him to miss a read. Not because he doesn't see the read, but because the angle is no longer available to him. This is partially saying shin angle. This is partially the timing he has on the pick and roll, and this is also partially just his handle isn't quite there to get into this read. I think he's a little impatient or a little too patient with the pick and roll, and allows this to happen.
Yeah, I think another issue there is his flexibility kind of limits him going downhill. Mm-hmm. He's not really comfortable dipping his shoulder into traffic and taking those sharper angles to the rim, like you said. I mean, I believe that Franz definitely saw that read. He's too smart of a passer not to. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's also the risk-averse tendencies I was talking about as a passer, even though that's a very risk-free pass, that side of the court is wide open.
Yeah, it's an empty corner pick and roll.
Nobody in help position there. That's a wide open dunk for Hunter Dickinson. But Franz, I mean, he'll take, I guess that's, quote-unquote safer, wing-to-wing skip that I believe that play ended in nothing, right?
Yeah, not really anything. And I think that it's just the idea of he knows he has a bad angle, so he'd rather not throw, even if it's the right read at a poor angle, he just processes on to the next read.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the passing delivery tools to make those tough angle passes either.
Yeah, which come from that flexibility. So here we get a pick and roll. I did not put the pick and roll clip in here. That this is the first one we know, but you already know it. You've got to use your angles. he doesn't use his angles, and we get into like some of his finishing package, which is not as flattering for his tools as you would think. He's super long. He does have like explosiveness to him, but often he finds himself settling for shots of a lesser tooled player because he takes poorer angles, and I feel like his finishing isn't where it needs to be. Um, like here, he has an okay read. If he slows down a little bit, he probably has a lob underneath the Hunter. But this is just not optimal to be flowing out of bounds against a sub NBA size center. These like circumstances should always be pushed into a place where, like, if you are moving downhill, a ref will call a foul. If you're flying towards the baseline, refs generally just don't smile upon that because you aren't in a position to earn a foul. Like college refs are, more swayed by, weirdness than I would say NBA refs are. But the process still has to be like, if it's not an NBA guy, I'm putting him in the front of the rim, and instead he gets a craft. It's a nice like crafty jump hook, but getting to that jump hook is a bigger problem than I would like. I think that I would like to see more gathers out of him. Here we're going to see like how Dylan Brooks uses his two-step, and on his second step, it's shoulder out, it's elbow out, it's creating an angle. The ball is fully extended, and there's help coming, and he's just going to flip it over Draymond, knowing that like I can always speed up, I can always slow down, but I'm going to create the separation I need to, and then I'm going to flip it. And this finishing difference, if you're going to be a guy who isn't going to finish over the top, it needs to be craft based. It needs to be able to create separation so that you can make those passing reads, that you can deliver the reads that like we've seen him make historically up until this point.
Yeah, I feel like people like don't realize how big Franz is. I think Franz sometimes like it feels like he doesn't realize it either. Like Franz is like very large, like all of 6'9" or 6'10" with what must be like a +2 or 4 wing, like 2 to 4 wingspan. And yeah, I mean, echoing what you said, like it's weird because like he plays really physically on defense. Like we'll get into this. Like he's not afraid to body up to way stronger dudes. And use his chest and his hip checks to get into them. But that's just same physicality is nowhere to be found on offense, even when he's going against smaller, frail defenders. Or just like he can just like get in them and draw a foul. Like and you're large and skilled. Like just go straight. Like use a like a last step to decelerate, which he definitely doesn't really have any change of speed in his game.
Yeah. Speaking of last steps, so here's another. I would say like everybody we're going to generally be seeing here is sort of a connector style player. Here we have Kyle Anderson recognizing that everybody's on one side of the floor, right? Absolutely on one side. And Oubre is in a little bit of help. So what Kyle needs to do is simply like just make Oubre think a little. So with his last step, he's going to just like use the truck stick on Kavitsky, just like slow all the way down, hit him, and then finish again flying back out. But he's created the foul. And the separation between these two is that he just creates an angle where Franz accepts the angle. So instead of crafting your way to an angle, Franz flips it up again, solid finish, but against more length, against more explosion, against more strength. Does that same thing transfer, or does the process need to shift to find a higher level of craft?
Yeah, and then building off what I said a little bit earlier, I do like have some hope for his development in terms of developing like foul draw grifting and more strength and angle based finishing because of that physicality. I'd be interested to hear what you think about that and how he develops that finishing. Obviously, he likely needs to add strength. I mean, he's not super weak, but like he's definitely frail as like NBA wing defenders go.
Yeah, I think that it's more craft to me than strength, and like it's a mindset shift of just being like I'm strong, I'm explosive, like put people in the hole. But more than anything, to me, it is about getting gathers, getting a little bit of grift, figuring out what contact works for him, and hunting that specific form of contact. Which is a process that I think every like wing going in gets, and so I'm excited to see how that plays for him. But he is starting from a place of, I would say, less than like pretty far from ideal approach to how he finishes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the thing with Franz is that like he just passes up shots that don't make any sense to me. Like this is a huge window. And he doesn't even really look at the rim. He's thinking about like, oh, this could be a hard closeout. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna get a hard closeout. And when he does like get towards the rim, I would say teams give him a good amount of rim gravity. And when they do, he makes like the right read. But if you're going to be his archetype in the league, if you're going to live off of advantage and taking care of advantage, you can't just stop advantage because you don't want to shoot a jumper. And it's not like he's a bad shooter. I think the jumper looks extremely good. I spend almost no time looking at the jumper because there's nothing wrong with the jumper.
Yeah.
And so like I think that the reason why it's so important, I'm just gonna roll back and watch this clip again. The reason why advantage perception is so important is that it's an essential connector skill, which is court mapping, which is understanding where everybody on the court is going to be, where the next play is. So if the next time they go under, he has to shoot. And for every successful connector, they have to have just like an innate sense of court mapping that doesn't really like require that many inputs. So here we're going to see a Kevin Porter pick and roll. This is from the last KD year. We see everybody's pretty close. It's a high pick and roll. Clay is sticking with Trey. They're going to go late show. And Herter decides to throw this pass. He is looking into the crowd, and he is doing a wraparound bounce pass to a roller, knowing that he has probably like a foot, that if he throws it a little too far ahead, Katie's going to get it. And he throws it into that window. Like Herter, looking away, understands that I have a small window, a small understanding of where the ball needs to be, because that's the advantage that I have. So I've mapped the advantage, and I'm seeking the advantage. I mean, like, that's a tiny window, and it requires a large sense of self-worth to pull off, but also like you have to understand where everyone is on the court and what you're capable of in that moment. And the lack of the inability for knowing that teams are closing out soft on you, therefore you just have to shoot. Like, no matter what, doesn't matter how your feelings are, you have to shoot that. An ideal court mapping situation looks like this, where Braun sees the Heater in a 1-3-1. He sees he's pointing to Hero saying, look, Hero is too high. If you swing the ball, I got a one more. Rondo actually makes the pass himself. Hero is too high. It's going to be just a simple one more from a simple high-low from Braun to AD for a dunk. Because he's mapped out Hero is not long enough, Hero is not fast enough to cover that distance. So he's pointing, throw it there, throw one more. Again, whose fault is this? It's Hero's, because he's one step out of position, and that's enough. That one step is enough at the highest levels, at the highest processing levels, at the highest connecting levels, which is sort of like what old LeBron will be, and he'll be terrifying at it. Looks like is recognizing slight mistakes and punishing teams immediately with the proper pass. And if the proper thing is you're wide open and you need to shoot the ball, you either run into the Ben Simmons problem of you desperately try to do anything else, or you have to shoot the ball. And that's like, I don't think that there's a ton that needs to be said on it, but just if that's going to happen, he has to put up a shot every single time. It's the proper solution.
Yeah, and I think, echoing everything you said, if Franz keeps this habit up, teams are just gonna stop sending hard closeouts. Even if Franz is shooting 39-40% from three, we see this with plenty of guys who don't shoot on volume, these kind of fake shooters. Even if Franz is hitting on high efficiency, teams aren't gonna waste their resources closing out, because there's just a probability that Franz isn't gonna capitalize on that opening.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the ultimate example of that is Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes, I would say, is a good NBA shooter, but the reality was that teams would try to recover advantage after Steph or Clay, short rolls, or to Draymond or whatever. But they would just be like, okay, we would rather have this outcome of a soft closeout against Harrison Barnes, because sometimes he might just record scratch, and we can recover all the advantage, and our defense can reset. And there is a danger that happens with Franz, and he would probably be the best shooter to my knowledge that would happen to. He would have the highest priors, and that would be the outcome, which is sort of terrifying, and also we could live in
a genuinely very good shooter. The priors, he should not be like this.
Right, and I think it's just wanting to make the great play versus the very good play, and it can just be a self-identity thing where it's no, this is a great shot, and if we just get him to believe it's a great shot, we're fine.
It's he's never satisfied with the shot quality that he has. He's I can always do something better. I can always get something better, and oftentimes he can't. And I think a good amount of the time it ends up with something worse. So
because mathematically, open shot for good 40% 3-point shooter is like one of the better shots you can get.
So it's just like open layup free throw. Like, you can't do much better.
Yeah, so it's just like at a certain point you got to set him down and be like, son, you're a good shooter. Just shoot the open ones. So a thing with Franz that I think gets underrated, his ability to reattach. He says like we talk a lot on this program about which way you're pushing defenders with your feet. He can occasionally, like, his first step is fine. Sometimes he loses defenders on the second step, but his ability to get back in front of people and reattach to get good contests is awesome. And I think that teams just routine like this is what you would show in like a 1950s style, like, this is a perfect shot contest, and he's just like arms out, perfect, hands in passing lanes, almost always on balance. Like, this is like beyond textbook, because often like textbook isn't what you would teach, but like it's literally what you would hold up as like, this is what I would like my defenders to do. I think that like I would like him to be more aggressive. I would like him to foul more, to hunt some of these actions a little bit more, because he's often in a perfect place, and sometimes like I think gets a little too trust the scheme and doesn't make a play. Like, he probably could have blocked this one if I'm like being honest. But I would look
conservative.
Yeah,
definitely.
But part of that's like college refs, because you never know when they're going to decide to call 3 fouls in 3 possessions. It's something I would like to monitor, but also like his block and steal rates were good. Like, this is by no means a player who isn't going to scale. I just like in the NBA, if he can do these things. This is a clip of Wesley Matthews, and so how the Milwaukee scheme works. And the Milwaukee scheme is basically just always getting bodies. So we get a pick and roll, he gets partially hit, and he just resets. At this point, you've won this possession. There was an advantage, a minor advantage on that pick and roll. Wesley is able to hold, and because he's able to hold long enough, Giannis is able there to clean up. And I think that, like, I don't want to say that, like, in an ideal world, in the world where Franz hits his like 99th or 100th percentile outcomes, like, he is capable of playing both the Giannis role of cleaning up and the point of attack role. And like, that's why I'm really curious, is like, where do teams want to put him in terms of like what the best outcome for him is. Like, obviously, like, almost nobody ever is going to be a level of defender that Giannis is, but just like the idea that he could be the rover because of his ability to like handle 2-on-1s and handle these like tough rotations, but also he has the strength and ability to reconnect. It's a fascinating archetypal interest for me, and we're going to see him reattach again here on a drag in space.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I almost wish he was like a little less technical sometimes, as you kind of mentioned. Like, he's really, really good at defending the point of attack with his lower body. Like, you won't really see him shifting his weight too far forward and getting handsy. Like I mentioned, he's so good at like hip checking, and just as you mentioned right at the top of the section, directing defenders where he wants them to go with his feet. Being the aggressor as the defender rather than letting the offense dictate where the offense wants to go. But I just wished Franz would transition that into like more like stocks is the easy way to say it, but just like there are definitely moments where he can make plays, especially against bigger defenders, I think, where he can get a little like slide his feet straight up, hands up, happy. And that can hurt him, and I think that will definitely burn him as the athletes get bigger and better and stronger. It's where it's like, okay, Franz, like, you can take a risk and swipe down as the ball's going up, or like you have really great timing on these weak side rim protection plays. Let's transition that into more of a primary role. But I mean, these are all really nitpicky things. Generally, with Franz's defense, I mean, he's so good, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're trying to say is there is a diminishing return on technical ability, and that like you have to do more than simply try to stay in front of people. Like, you have to make them think about their moves, think about what they're selling. Like, this is technically brilliant, and his ability to slide after positioning and reattach and just hold strong, like, will work against bad creators. But how does he do when he's suited up against the higher tier, more mobile creators who are one, stronger, but two, just like not as capable of being worried? Those are the questions with how his technical ability and like why we kind of want him to be less technical, if I can speak for both of us, is that like there is a diminishing return against like the top end of the league on what technical will get you, and you kind of have to like either get into the like pushing them towards their weaknesses and trying to corral them there, or doing something that makes them uncomfortable because technique alone won't do that. Because like this is, if you put this on a fourth wing or a third wing, he's just gonna maul them, and that'll be awesome. But what happens with, you know, he's the best defender and he has to P of it?
Yeah, like I think Franz there, like he just needs to try to make creators think more.
Yep.
Because like the best creators, you know, get to their spots without thinking and have, you know, myriad of ways to get to whatever spot they want in whatever way they do it, whether it be, you know, Kawhi or Luka or Kyrie or whoever. Like Franz can do it. Like he has the tools to do it, to make defenders really uncomfortable. You know, like I said, defending with his feet, being proactive rather than reactive at the point of attack on defense. But he just doesn't do it very often.
I think it's partial.
Like yeah, so like I mean, I think that's potentially low hanging fruit for his development. Again, but like it's always hard to know with stuff like that in terms of mentality. But
yeah, and I think part of it's scheme. Like Michigan's a very like, look, if we do these things, we're gonna win, and like they're right. So I think that like I think that some of it is technical. So here he gets run off the line, and if you push him to his left, he's not always great. Here he does like a slither finish, which is where you jump stop and then like slither back the opposite way. I have a micro clip skill for it for a second, but it does bring up a question of like, this isn't a particularly hard closeout. I think that most other players in his archetype, like this is already up. He catches on, like he catches making a decision, which I like. I think it should just like his feet should have been set. He should have been ready to go up. But like when he does get run off the line and he gets pushed to his left, he's gonna have to get finishing skills, especially to his left, because like if he's not comfortable going up and over, he has to figure out a way to go around, or teams will just simply like corral him, push him left, and recognize that he doesn't have as much craft with his left. The key to a move like this is just like the refractory athleticism of changing directions. Like Gordon Hayward, you know, was a tennis player, really changes directions really quickly, sees that you have a challenge, and simply is able to plant and redirect and extend as far as possible. I think that if you forced Franz into this from an NBA perspective with his left, he would not be comfortable and wouldn't be able to get it off, like you know, under a myriad of different angles. And that's a concern that I do have. I do wonder like what happens when teams just run him off the line consistently and stay at home, which like we're going to get into.
I think that's like again, as we mentioned earlier, like could be like a double negative issue where like teams win if they soft close because Franz isn't shooting, and then teams win if they hard close and just you know play passing lanes because Franz in a one-on-one with you know most NBA bigs who can contort well enough just isn't going to be able to move or be physical enough to create requisite advantages. Like he's just very stiff and upright on his drives. Like it's like you just don't see any craft in terms of footwork. It's not great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that another issue that I have is that like if teams are if you're allowing teams to pick their coverage, it limits what you can do offensively. So like here, the Pacers are going to run like a split cut. A split cut's where two offensive players sprint at each other and they read whichever defender is going to make a mistake. One pops, one cuts, and they're targeting Anthony Edwards here. And presenting multiple options, you force defenders to think when defenses have to think rather than just executing scheme. You have the upper hand. And I worry that he can be one-dimensional in the hunt for good shots that he passes up, or the hunt for great shots. He simply passes up good ones. And like, is this an easy shot? No. But to me, this is the exact sort of thing I would want to run with Franz, but I don't know if he is currently like, you know, processing in a way that that allows him to take that consistently.
Yeah, I mean, he has really strong processing tools, like in terms of, you know, the way he can quickly process actions. Like, you know, he can do it. It's just, I think, I like to think of it as just Franz needs to see his processing through a different lens, which I think is definitely better than not having the requisite processing speed or decision making in the first place.
Yeah, Scotty has this issue as well. Like Scotty's a different level of shooter, but Scotty definitely has the same like, oh, what should I do? And I think Cade had it his senior year and in EYBL where he was just thinking, and then he broke through.
Cade obviously, you know, proved that I think with Cade, it's more that just like he doesn't want to,
Yeah.
but he can. He's like, fine. But whereas with Franz, I genuinely, it's to the point where he is more like just straight up wired that way and doesn't have, can't switch modes when he needs to. I mean, it's different roles in different situations, obviously.
Yeah. Just watch Franz off ball. His head never stops moving. Like you can just see, like just watch the ball moves. He moves. He's quick. He's always looking back. He's always adjusting. Like this is the ideal help side stuff. Hands are out. He's scanning for cutters when he knows his guy is setting a screen, but he's still being aware of the slip. Like this is a lot of times younger guys fall asleep and just stare at the midpoint between the ball and their man and lose whatever's happening in the periphery. But he's just consistently scanning, consistently looking for actions, consistently talking. And for a guy who, yes, he's a sophomore in college, but he's on the younger side. This is what professional help side looks like, where when you have multiple responsibilities, when you have multiple dangerous actions, and you are in a spot of high leverage, you just simply have to keep looking back and forth. I used the Jake Crowder example because you can see his little ponytail whipping back and forth. It's great. And because he knows he has corner and he has box out. So he has to, if the ball swings, it's his responsibility to fire all the way over. And if a shot goes up, he also has to box out Marcus All. So he has to choose between these two extremely difficult things with one of the greatest processors of all time with the ball in his hands, who, takes a shot that I think most teams can live with. He's able to box out Gasol. You get a good challenge, but that is the level of difficulty that we're talking about in terms of like what you have to be able to do on defense. Here, Juwan Howard is just so much fun as a play caller. There's so much just like dirty things in here. We get a guard to guard ghost into a middle pick and roll. This corner defender is screwed. He just sprinted all the way to the corner and now he has to run the opposite direction to get a tag. It's just cruel to make a college kid do this. And Franz has a couple of choices. You have the crackback back to the lifter, you have the kick out to the wing, or you have the lob over the top. And you can see that he's not really seeing all of them. I think this is just because like he picks up his he in his mind like already has made a decision. And instead of finishing with a left-hand layup, which like I think is available, he takes this shot. If we were to show you that previous screenshot and say this is the shot you end up with, every coach in America is like that. We got a good defensive possession. It doesn't matter if it goes. It's just that there needs to be a slightly better process of keeping a defense like the same way that he's comfortable in 2-on-1s. I don't necessarily always find him as comfortable holding defenders where it's like, this guard is screwed right now. He doesn't make him pay. He lets him make one decision. And he's looking up. Instead of staring at him, either through the corner of his eyes or directly, just being like, which one are you going to pick, little man? And then whenever he picks, wrong choice.
Yeah, I think Franz is definitely someone who like is afraid of turnovers. Which both of us have talked about plenty is not a great thing for young passers.
No,
like every great quarterback throws interceptions, but I think Franz there, like I said, like that 2-on-1 is inherently a risk. Like yes, that point guard is in a terrible position. I think it was like Trice was basically screwed, but like there is a chance Franz can pick wrong. He could make a sudden movement, interrupt his pass, turn the ball over. And I think Franz. Like that the shot he took represents less risk because it's not a turnover. Like he's not going to turn the ball over shooting a floater, but Franz is like that's honestly just less EV than making that pass. And even if it's a turnover, if he makes that pass 10 times, turns it over twice, but gets 8 layups, like that's better result.
It's also a better long-term result. Like I think that the thing that I try to strike out most of, like why turnovers, especially if you're young ball handlers, are so good. Like I mean, for me, the ideal young point guard situation is high assists, high usage, high turnovers, because it means you're like there are the right kind of turnovers. Like if you have a turnover in that spot where you have a point guard in the jackpot where they're defending a lifting shooter and a 7-foot tall roll man, like. If they pick wrong, it's like, cool, next time we run it, I know what he's going to do. And the fact that he aborted that decision-making process to make a decision that couldn't end in a turnover, like, yeah, missed shot's a missed shot, but like you got to a shot. That's a bad decision-making process because next time he doesn't necessarily have that cataloged. And that's a long-term demerit, even though it's a short-term positive. And that's what I mean when I'm like, so when I like dislike ATO as much as I do and kind of enjoy parsing through defenders or ball handlers. I don't know why I keep saying defenders. I'm talking about ball handlers. Talking about ball handlers' decisions being like there's good turnovers. This is the
Yeah.
sort of thing we mean. Like this is a bad shot just because there could have been a better turnover. As counterintuitive as that can seem from a long-term developmental process as a ball handling decision maker.
Yeah, because like a ball handler's like needs those reps and isn't going to get better at throwing those passes against tags if they don't screw up. And like right now, Franz has the license to mess up those passes. It would seem, or I mean maybe he doesn't, and that's why he's not throwing them. But like as he gets to the NBA, like he's going to have less of a license, assuming he's not playing in like the G League or something, which I'm not sure he will be. But yeah, I mean he has to throw those passes to learn how to read taggers because as a if Franz is going to run even like second side pick and rolls as like a fourth offensive player or third or fourth offensive player in the league, like you have to be able to read a basic tag. You absolutely have to. And not like chickening out almost is like, it's just not going to benefit him in the long term. I also want to say, unrelated to this, like if you like roll back to like the floater, like I just think it's cool that like Franz basically like releases that ball above the rim.
Yeah.
Like just another example of Franz being enormous. And again, like just that's another weapon that he can, better utilize because like even taking a terrible angle, not trying to get into the body of his tiny defender at all. Like he's still releasing the ball 11 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Like, and like that's gonna be there against smalls in the league. So I think again, some low hanging fruit for slashing development there. Just wanted to make that point. Aside from the overall process of that play.
Yeah. So the reason why I find the on ball like half court decision making so like difficult is because his full court like in transition decision making is like ideal. This is again another little connector trait. It's just the ability to like make big space a difficulty for transition defenders. So like here, there's the high man is going to take ball, and the low man is always going to sprint to the front of the rim because that's what you're taught. So this is a 3-on-2, 2-on-1 drill. He knows he has a late crasher if for some reason he gets averted, but there's also as you can see defenders crashing as well. So he simply just like creates a good angle and allows for an okay read. Like I think that this isn't the best one. If he had waited a little bit longer, he could have like gotten the layup that I think that he gets later in this game. But like this is an essential connector skill is turning big space into like hard rotations in the same way that like you would in like there is advantage in transition based on how you play angles. Like it sort of doesn't seem the same because like we think of advantages like rotations, which we're going to see later. But in transition, there is still this idea of rotations defensively. Like teams know what they're generally supposed to do in transition, and I find his process is good there. Not amazing. Like we're going to get a really good example here from Kevin Herter again. He jumps this pick and roll. Bagley has his back turned, so the pass has to be a little bit higher so Herter can like really hit the gas and gamble on it because he knows that like there's only one pass that's possible. Pushes in transition, and defense is in a really tough spot because one has to stick with Trey off ball, and the other one has to prevent a rim runner. So basically half the side is guaranteed to be taken. So it's a pretty easy dump off. There's going to be a light seal, and it's going to end up in a layup because he sort of established where everyone's rotations were going to be. Granted, the Kings in transition were not a particularly good team, but the idea still holds of building angles in transition to create a harder rotation. So I think that's Fox would either have to like sprint all the way across the court and jump with DeAndre Bembry, which like is not advised. And this also happens off ball. So here we have a foot race. In the top lane, we have Otto. In the bottom two lanes, we have Raptors.
This is A+ production.
Yeah, I really leaned into this one. And like Otto gives this ball up, and he sees that there's nobody in front of him. So even if he sprints and does not get the ball, Beal will second cut behind him, and he can draw two defenders. And if he does that, he's been successful because he's warped space. The thing is that lanes 2 and lanes 3 don't get off the blocks great, and Otto, seeing that he has a straight line to the rim, runs basically as hard as possible. Bang. And this is the same recognition of space of like, oh, there's a rotation that's about to be missed. We get a really clear example on the second one. Ball's ahead, nobody in front of him, sprint diagonal. Again, we would see Beal on the second one, and he wins. I'm just really proud of. Look, when you've been in an editing lab for like 10 hours in a day, you start to lose your mind a little bit.
This is great. This is so much fun.
Yeah, I think it's the good stuff. But this is the precept of like connectors need to have a keen awareness of all these forms of space, because these are the possessions that they save, and these are like how their offensive ratings are always weirdly high, is because they just find these like little like almost their possessions that need just a small bit of tweaking. And like even if that ball isn't there, even if Stanley Johnson has to sprint for his life, Beal's behind him, and maybe Beal shakes into a layup, and these are the things that we're hunting for. So while we talked about Franz being like a little bit more difficult as a POA guy against stars, I would think he's going to be awesome as like a POA denial guy, where it's just like you put him on an island, you're like, hey, we have coverage on the lob, don't let him catch the ball.
He sticks his arms out like wingspan measuring style, and he covers half the floor. Like,
yeah. And again, this is your textbook, and like thank you to CBS and the Big Ten for this perfect angle for this. He's positioned where his man's like kind of in like the dunker spot extended, looking back and forth. He has enough spacing that like if this ball goes in to the big, he's able to rotate. If not, he's able to have good rebounding position. And like this is sort of what you get from him, whether it's as a point of attack guy, as a denial guy, or as a help side guy, is that he has multiple avenues to defensive archetypes. And as a wing that like has a pretty variable usage, it allows him to have like sort of like a higher or a variable defensive usage as well, where like we don't really think of like amount of possessions that you can put on a star or put on as an off-ball playmaker, or put as like a very high energy guy in the same way that we think of as offensive usage because of statistical availability. But it is a very much like a real concept that coaches think about when they're building their lineups. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say again, like the way Franz like plays space and understands how to use his tools to play in that space is great. Like he like ground coverage, name of the game, as we've been saying. Like he can take 2 steps and be in the corner and then slide over and help on that post rotation, like Devin Vassell style. So and like just being that huge, like there just aren't wing defenders with his level of court mapping and space awareness and the size. Like he is like small center sized. Like he really is. And I just think that like that's a really rare package with the way he controls space at his age. Like it just, we need Franz to like take this court mapping and space awareness to the offensive end. Like he can do it. We know he can do it because he's just so special at it. Looking at the basketball from the other way.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, I don't know what you see here, but I see a wide open driving lane. We have a tight seal. We have basically no help side. Everybody is sticking close to their man. And that area is basically an island, just being like, hey, if you want to try to score, man, go ahead. And he doesn't take advantage of that in a way that like it's not a 1 or 2 times a game thing. I would say there's between 5 or 7. Like they're not record scratches, but like if you put Nick Young into the same circumstance, he's taking that drive to the baseline 10 times out of 10. Like players like Josh Christopher, I mean, would probably make the same decision. Like I think Josh Christopher's like a real prospect, but the idea is that like Josh Christopher sees that advantage and seizes upon it, and there's still an intellectualization of how he decides. Like, would you say that this is going to be a shot? His man is on the floor, and the nearest.
You think it would be?
You would
think a shot, or like at the very least, you pull that big, with a pump fake with your eyes and your head and your torso to the rim at the last possible second and lay it down to Austin Davis, because that's a pretty wide open window, and that weak side tagger is a little bit late if you want it back. But again, it's just like it's the safety thing. Like again, like does that lob or that lay down present a minor turnover risk? Like it's a wide open read. It really is. But like sure, there's a minor turnover risk. But I mean, kicking the ball out against this, like not taking advantage of a tilted defense, it just creates a worse shot, like you said. And I mean,
it's not that it creates a worse shot; it's that you're not guaranteed to get that same level of shot ever again.
Yeah. It doesn't guarantee a better shot.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of good to great makes sense, but there are times where good is allowed to be the enemy of perfect. Where like the idea of a perfect shot exists, so maybe it's out there, and like on some possessions it is, but other times like if you get a 6 foot push shot, you just take it every time. Like yeah, maybe you can manipulate the big and give it a playoff, but you just can't let the idea of a perfect shot allow you to take a off the dribble 18 footer that's a light fadeaway, heavily contested. Like you don't know that that's what's behind door two, but you're not guaranteed to have a better shot. And this is sort of the downside of having high processing is that some players do fall into this trap where they over process. They think like,
Yeah.
oh, there could be a better shot. Oh, there could be this, and like there needs to be a balance where like, okay, so there's one opportunity to score past it. Okay, so you attack downhill, give a couple crosses. There's another jumper that could have been taken. Gets the guy on the hezzy. Now we have shot 3. There's almost shot 4. Like there's the dump off. And like all of those were seen as non-perfect shots. And as a result, sure, they get another paint touch. Sure, there's a crackback. Like there's, the opportunity to have those things, but that opportunity isn't guaranteed. And, we've seen quite a few players in this idea. And like, I think that this is like when we talk about advantage, when we talk about like, we're going to see a little bit of the Warriors, is that like it is about presenting yourself to open shots, but it's also that like if there is a good shot, you just take it. Like in watching a whole bunch of Warriors tapes for this, you know how many times that like David West took a 16-footer off the catch, like a jumper that just doesn't exist in the NBA. It's like that's a good shot for him. So we understand that the process works, and sometimes yeah, it's not the ideal shot, sure. Like it's it's points per possession isn't as great as a Steph above the break three or Harrison Barnes in the corner or a dunk or even like a Steph floater. But this is a good outcome, and we're just gonna take the good outcomes because if we just do this process enough, like the process is the goal, it's not the outcomes. So like I think that this kind of basketball in some ways does harm players because they think that like every possession can be this, where like Steph goes to or Clay goes to screen. You get, so now I think that's Corey Joseph has 2 choices. He can, run towards Clay, which he should do. If he runs towards Clay, then De'Aaron has to rotate. If De'Aaron has to rotate, Bagley has to rotate. If Bagley rotates, 25 is Justin Jackson. Then Justin Jackson has to sprint across. And like the result is like if one of those mistakes happens, yeah, sure, you could dump off. But like that's not going to happen every possession. And sometimes you just take that 14-footer. Like if Bagley rotates perfectly, which like he makes a mistake here, and Livingston's able to dunk at the rim. But the idea is like if that's the shot you get, if the shot is an Andre like 11-footer push floater, awesome. Next time it will be available. And that's the concepts that like I think can be damaging for young players who are overexposed to system basketball. And like it's not the same thing as the flex. I got a lot of flack from Kings fans about showing too many clips dunking on the Kings, so I went and found some good Kings processing. So we get a uphill ghost screen into a pick and roll. DiVincenzo gambles. De'Aaron Fox is going to push downhill. This means that Halliburton's man has to make a choice. Let De'Aaron Fox get 2 feet in the paint, which is a bad idea, or let Halliburton get a jumper. And like this is the ideal where it's like, yeah, you put a defense into a tough 2-on-1 spot. But the one thing that Halliburton couldn't do is, hey, maybe I need a better shot. It's like, no, I'm open. Let's fire it. And you're welcome, Ray. And it's the like, yes, he passes up an okay shot there, and they get a better one. But if there are good shots, you take them. And I'm like hammering home on this point because like we all idealize this form of basketball, but it does bring demerits that like do kind of need to be recognized when exposing it to developing players. And like there's a reason that guys like Mo Buckets keep existing in the Warriors scheme. It's like, yeah, they take good shots. For them, they take good shots. This is, I think, the only time that I slow down a Franz jumper. It's because it looks great. It's technically, he's on balance. The follow through is nice. Like he has a little bit of balance issues when he shoots off movement, but generally, like it's a great looking jumper. He'll miss a little short here and there, but like for the amount of short that he is, and like there's not a fundamental difference between the closeout he gets here. I'm just going to rewind it a little bit. This is not a bigger closeout than anything we've seen. In fact, this is like one of the shorter closeouts. But because it's
that first one's larger.
Yeah, but because it's a designated play where he's sitting in the corner and the read is basically like if the if they help too high up, then it just automatically goes for him for a shot. Because it's designated, I think he feels more free to shoot it. And I just have to like hammer home the point that like in the NBA, the shooting windows are so small. And then if you hesitate even a little bit, NBA length, NBA closeouts, and NBA athleticism allows for closing down of just monstrous amounts of space, so that even wide open shots, like if you've ever played pickup with like a D1 or an NBA guy or a WNBA player, how quick like you think an open shot is super not open is crazy. And that hesitation, that like I don't like it allowing defenders to help out more or less. Like Norm Shaw had no business getting this, and he like basically misses it by a finger. It ends up being a foul. But these would be the clips that I would show to anyone like Franz, where there's a a difference in like why they're shooting these shots, and it's just like you will not have, your release is not fast enough, your differential is not high enough that you can hesitate when people are giving you free money. You can't turn down $10 bills because you love 20s. It's like, no, just take the 10. Money's money. And that is my biggest hang up with his jumper. Is like the processing and when he's comfortable shooting is a considerable difference. I would love for these Franz versus Moody discussions to happen once we get to Q&A, because I have some strong thoughts that I cannot get into now, or this thing will be 4 hours long.
Yeah, I think that like going back to like the point on like a flaw with Franz's process in terms of going for these like idealized advantage situations is that like I think this is the case with a lot of young connectors, is that like Michigan and like I'd say the majority of teams that these young connector prospects find themselves on like don't have the advantage creators to really create the situations that Franz would thrive in. Like there's nobody on Michigan that's bending a defense to consistently creating those 2-on-1s to where Franz can really thrive. Like I think a lot of the situations that Franz are envisioning aren't actually there in actuality. Well, I mean, I think there's merit to saying that those situations will be there more often in the league, where almost every team has someone who can bend the defense. Obviously, the extent is different for every team, but like every team has a guy like that, even if it's like a dumb microwave score. But I think like this is an opportunity for Franz like to learn to do like the opposite, like and like I said, like where he has the license to like to take that push shot or that pull up jumper. I'm pretty sure later in this game he like actually does take a pull up in a good spot. I would be
very excited to see him work with Davis Bertans, who's never met a jumper. He's like, oh no, if I touch it, it's like I'm open. Which is the great, like him and like KD have the same mentality of like, oh, if I have the ball, him, KD, Gallo, like Beasley to some degree.
It's how like, Rocco plays. Like,
I'm open.
Rocco, like on the perimeter, like if he catches the ball and like the defender is not in his chest before he catches it, he's shooting the ball. And like Rocco is a significantly worse shooter than Franz, like significantly worse. So I'm just like, please, like wiretap him some of that moxie, because like Franz like has 4 feet of space and he isn't even like it's not even that he looks at the rim and he decides I'm not going to take it. It's like he doesn't even look. Like he already has in his head like I'm hunting a layup here, when that wide open 3 really is your layup.
Yeah. So here we have the exact same situation that we had earlier.
I think it was the play I was talking about actually.
Yeah. So we have the same like general 3 options. Your reads are the 2 highlighted. Those are the 2 people who could have tag responsibility. Sometimes if a smaller player is in a really high leverage situation, like their point guard is, I guess Trice is on the weak side. Sometimes people will just send help overload and zone on the weak side. So like sometimes that could be the read. It's pretty rare, but it's possible. So you basically have 3 extremely good options. You have the lob to Dickinson. You have the one hand push pass to slot, or you can just a dangerous decision to a better one. Like there's a lob there. It's a pretty tough, like it might be a scoop lob. I don't know if he currently like is comfortable throwing that from an assist turnover ratio idea. So here is a question of what happens when a defense doesn't respect advantage. What happens when a defense, like here we're going to get a double on Bagley, we're going to get around the horn, and Giannis runs Halliburton off the 3-point line. We get an X out. And we're just going to get to around the horn. Giannis is going to close out super hard. Rashawn sets a nice little hammer screen to give Giannis a tougher angle. Runs him off the line. And now we're 4-on-3. Giannis is trailing. We have just a little 1-on-1 on the weak side. And the best outcomes are dunks, layups, wide open threes. And what happens if a defense just stays in zone? You can force up a mid-range running hook, which is fine, but it didn't ask a difficult question of the defense. And that's sort of the processing issue. Like Halliburton is like literally making something out of nothing here. But that's the general process that, you either have to be comfortable making these mid-ranges. OG's going to have a version of this where everybody stays home, OG 1-on-1, and like OG is bigger and stronger and has more creation juice. But this is what he kind of has to live on in those circumstances. And I don't necessarily see this being a feasible diet for Franz in situations where he is forced to, where everybody stays home and he wants to process into a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, Franz, it's just another example of needing to be more vigilant, seeking out these higher risk passes. But I mean, I do think in the specific example of that play, like there is some positivity. Like he is going to be able to get that like 17-footer off over basically everyone. Mm-hmm. Like even though like his jail wasn't really successful, like he couldn't really hold Johnny Davis, who's a pretty good defender and is stronger than Franz. But like even then, like he can just shoot over him, which I definitely think is somewhat positive in terms of shooting development, even if he's not really comfortable consistently hitting that shot right now. But again, I mean, you'd rather him take the path of less resistance and make the defense think more?
See, I think of it as he is thinking of it as the path of least danger. It's like, look, the median outcome here is the mid-range jumper. Let's take the mid-range jumper, which to me is like that's fine if you have no.
He's not going to turn the ball over on a mid-range jumper.
Right, but that's fine if you're the third best player on the floor. But if you have aspirations of being the first best player on the floor, like you kind of have to put some skin in the game, some of these decisions, and that's my tip. Here we get a pretty nuts defensive play. He's going to see that there's no real way to throw the pass to his defender, so he's going to stab at a middle pick and roll, which is I don't want to say ill-advised, but like generally the sort of people who can pull this off are just like ultra rangy defenders. The ball gets through on a delay, and he's able to cut off the defender so bad that they just retreat out. Like it's not just his ability to cover space, because those guys who can cover one directional space, he covers like he recovers in space, which is a really difficult game to play. And this leads me to believe like I kind of like him more as a secondary or tertiary defender, with more help side duties than a point of attack guy. Because if he can recover on secondary or tertiary guys, you can basically get into situations where you're like, force the the main guy to beat you, because you can just basically cut off their water supply, and there's only so much for the most part that one scorer can kill you if you are basically doing the coverage that he hates most, which is cutting off the passing angles and forcing downing attackers into low efficient shots.
Yeah, his long range change of direction ability is really ridiculous. I mean, he's good at it in the short range, like swiveling his hips and mirroring, like as we showed earlier. But he definitely can suffer against quickness or strength. But in the big spaces, we talked about like offensively, as a connector, it's important to, as like an off-ball offensive player connector, it's important to make the best of those big spaces on defense. It is equally important as an off-ball defender to take away the value of those big spaces. Mm-hmm. And there really just aren't a lot of defenders, as I'm kind of getting at, like that can do that, like Franz I think can, with the level of size and just awareness and processing that he has.
Yeah.
Where Franz is like there, like you said, like there aren't guys who can like dig at the nail and recover like he does. Like he's able to stop on a dime. Like it is not as easy as it looks. I mean, I don't think it looks easy, but like it is even more difficult than it looks to do what he does there. Sprint over to that corner and stop on a dime to contest without getting blown by or leaving himself exposed to a drive or an up fake or a foul if you're playing against one of the like someone who grifts. Just like that big space coverage, like there just aren't a lot of guys at the size who can do it. Like like even like looking like other wing defenders, like Aaron Henry isn't very good at that. Like the big space coverage. Like we'll get into the Moody stuff eventually. Like he's not as good as the big space coverage.
Yeah, he also has the, again, I want to say the Moody stuff because boy, do I have thoughts. So here we're going to get like another just like evil Michigan set. It's going to be a hawk screen. They're clearing out this backside really effectively. They love to clear out and then like set a flare screen for that clear out because that's just, and instead they're being put into like straight up no-win situations. The problem is that Franz just does not get toes towards the rim. Like in a part that we talked about, or in the first play where we talked about him, taking a running hook, this needs to be 2 feet in the paint. And a separation between him and other wing creators is that like he does not revel in like paint touches in a way that you would think for somebody with his tools. And a lot of times if he gets 1 foot in the paint, it'll flare out. Like here, I think he gets one, and then the second step is away from the basket.
Paint.
Yeah, he leaves the paint, and that destroys the angle that would have been like an easy dump off, but because he took a rougher angle, the dump off isn't there. I mean, generally just like throw the lob up rather than throwing low passes to bigs. That's neither here nor there. So this is like, I would say, unforgivable to me. This is an island. This is like the sort of thing that like your creators would die for. Like, I think that like if you showed this to Cam Thomas, he might cry because like Cam Thomas would absolutely murder everyone in this coverage. This is the sort of thing that scorers, that people who are like true advantage seekers, like the reason why on-ball creators are jealous of off-ball creators is like they get catches like this where a defender is closing out hard. There's no help over top. There's no help in the paint, and Franz doesn't immediately like challenge that. It is a catch. It is a hole. It is a like, well, let's see what happens. Like, no, there should be all gas, no brakes. Like, again, Rocco precaution. You give him this coverage, he is going to try to murder somebody at the rim.
Yeah, he's going to try to dunk on him, like from 10 feet out.
Yeah, but like that's just this processing isn't the same. It's a jab away, and now like by the time he attacks, there's 3 feet. There's one help over to help with like the front side, and then 2 weak side rim protectors with a third sort of like lingering to mop up if there's a skip pass. So any advantage that could have happened has been wasted. And sure, he gets a step back jumper, which like is a shot I do honestly really like for him. But the idea is his process to get there is a problem.
Yeah. I want to make a quick point about the last pass in that, like, I think the contact aversion, like, just also hurts his ability to make these tough passes. Because, like, you'll see him hit these wraparounds to bigs. But, like, I almost think he's, like, more comfortable, making the passes, like, falling out of bounds. Like I can think of a couple times where he makes these really good, like, interior laydowns without really seeing where he's throwing the ball. But he's falling out of bounds. And therefore, he doesn't have to deal with an actual physical human being getting into his airspace. Mm-hmm. But when he has that, like, he just freaks out and forgets how to, hold his space. Like, I think you'll see like other like great interior passers, like Jaden Springer is so good at holding his space and like using his frame to like open those angles even wider by seeking the contact and kind of directing the dropping bigs or whatever defenders in the directions that they want, whereas Franz like lets the bigs or whoever defender dictate where he goes, which is not only going to like make him less willing to throw the pass, it just makes the passing angles more difficult than they need to be.
Yeah, we've talked about framing hands as a driver a lot on this program, where like your last step, if you have any inclination you might pass, is to get as many defenders' hands in opportune places as possible. My bigger problem with an off-ball, like a secondary creator, tertiary creator, big wing not attacking immediately, is it doesn't hold weak side defenders accountable. So like the person who was in the worst position was that far weak side corner defender. So like here, OG Anunoby, Miles Turner jumps like flying out of the picture. If I could do the like spinning space meme, I would do it right here. But so the person who's actually in trouble here is not Miles Turner. Miles Turner has made a mistake. Yes, there's a guard who's too high as well. But the person who's actually in trouble is TJ Warren. Because TJ Warren is now guarding 3 people. He has the ball, he has the potential dump off, and he has the skip pass. And if OG waits, there's a chance that help recovers to maybe allow TJ to guard 2 people and then ideally 1 person. And So it's that anytime that there's a mistake, you really have an opportunity to put pressure on every link of the chain. And if there is somebody who's under helping, well, next time down, skip pass over the top. Like, easy read. And this is what we talked about, how like there's a progression of reads and putting a progression of pressures. It's stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just watching his head move off ball, just like always scanning. So now we have a 2-on-1. This is our making a choice is a disadvantage. He has both of the like the low cutter and the flash from the top of the key downwards, and he's just reading the eyes of the defender, whichever person they're going to. You try to take an R out, you try to goad them into making the decision of your choice. He gets a little 18-foot closeout, gets knocked off balance, one step, able to recover, gets an incredible challenge from basically falling over in one step. Like it's almost on his back, like ready to slide out. One step, good challenge. Like this is the level of comfort in this 2-on-1 is very impressive, and then he counters it with two more like relatively impressive decisions back to back.
Like he's like I said, like he besides being so comfortable, like this stuff wouldn't work if he was 6'7".
No,
like he could just be like in two guys' space at once. Where like there's like at the pause, like there is really no threat of an advantage with Franz right in the middle. Because like he can recover if the dump off is made, and obviously in the instance where that short closeout is forced, he can obviously recover because he's closer anyways. Obviously, I think it's an example. Like his hips aren't perfect, and like I mean mostly that was an amazing test. Like Johnny Davis was just cooking in this game. Yeah, I mean he counters the advantage creation so well because like he's just a counter to what modern NBA offense is built to do, which like is so valuable.
Yeah. So let's talk about defenders who are awesome in 2-on-1s. Like this is like the challenge in 2-on-1s in the perimeter is one, trying to figure out angles. So like here, Kobe shows like a hand underneath the ball. This is a really hard bounce pass to make, obviously, because he's making a scoop motion. So Isaac sees that and it's like, oh, he's either going to fake or go over the top. And since Isaac has, I think Terrence Ross below him, he knows he has a little bit more leverage. And it's all about driving that back foot as hard as possible to cover as much space as possible. So when this ball does come out, he has the opportunity to like jump it cleanly. If you jump it cleanly, it's a dunk. Versus if you deflect it, like it's probably points for somebody else. It leads you to really want your money. You've worked hard for it. Why should somebody else get it? Again, ball. As soon as that ball gets showed, he declares where he thinks it's going to be. Explosive first step. And then it gets fouled right at the rim. You've got to get that above the rim. Here we see OG doing the same thing, and this OG adds a second layer because we have a lower defender who he has to pass off to. So Ben Simmons is setting like this sort of like weak flare screen. We have a double on Joel. Joel's going to retreat, and as this angle changes, OG makes it communicate. So now he only has one person. So now the low man has two because like this diagonal, it's the same angle to the drop and to the corner. OG can cover a pretty big space, get downhill. And like this just requires communication of like low has double, OG is moving, and like these are the circumstances where like ideally you want Franz is that if you have the ability to delay off ball, you can let him roam and let him really attack these troubled decision making processes where he can make mistakes and still recover. Like here he gets beat like to the low side, like there's basically no help. It's a guard downhill. Like this should be a wrap.
This is what Franz needs to do if the roles are switched.
Yes. And he's able to battle back and get a like basically like perfect vertical contest.
Yeah, it's the reattach like we talk about. And like when your legs are that long and like you can move as fluidly as Franz can, like you have to be really, really, really quick or like really, really good at generating leverage or strong with your shoulder dips and off arms to totally get rid of him. Like his not just the recovery tools, but like his recovery instincts are phenomenal. Yeah. And I think a lot of times you'll see young defenders who like have those recovery tools who like very much have the length or hip flexibility or stride length and just general movement skills to make those recoveries, but are less enthused and willing to do so. And they just don't have the know-how to do so. Where Franz, as we're getting at like over and over, is just extremely complete. like as a young defender. Like they just don't come like this very often.
Yeah.
In the intersection of doing everything. Like he like makes all of the pieces of the puzzle work.
Mhm. Yeah, I would. I think I have like maybe a little lower just because like being versatile. Any degree of versatility also means that like not every coach will do exactly how you would like endeavor. Like degree of like unclear is a degree that like a bad coach can make a mistake on, or a bad front office can surround, or you know, a bad lineup that makes them look a little bit worse. And to me, there's an element of that with Franz because like you could deploy him about 4 or 5 different ways. I think all of them work well, but I think there are still some circumstances where like he is not going to be fully optimized. Like I think that there is a tendency to see like someone labeled as a good defender is like, all right, go get on the island, like go guard Kawhi, and like I'm sure that he'd do like a solid job, but I just don't think that's the best defensive outcome for him. I think that generally there's a lack of a lack of nuance when discussing defensive outcomes with regard to scheme and with regard to clarity of role. And Franz, I think, is a good test case of that. Not that he's like automatically going to be the caliber of, you know, defender that like OG or Isaac can be, because I mean he does have some tools limitations compared to them. The thing I find interesting is that like he has a gravity as a shooter. Like I think that, you know, we saw him dig off a strong side shooter, and like nobody digs off him ever. And I think that like the percentages are great, but like I think NBA teams will. Like NBA teams like seriously send help. Yeah, like this
teams aren't going to treat him as the same level of shooter. Also, just because like NBA teams prepare differently, like defensively.
Yeah, and I also just like wonder what happens if a team's like, "I dare you," like puts their arm out and says, "Are you with us?" He's with us. Like, how is he going to respond to like 5 he's with us, or you know, 2 or 3 hell no's in his first rookie year? Because like if that's the book on you, people will say it. Like, it's a concern for me to see how he responds to it. This is, I think, my favorite Juwan Howard play because this is like I don't think I really included this. Like, it has a nice little cut from Franz, but like this is from a 2 guard front. It's a guard pick and roll into a guard post up. The big moves into the dunker spot, and then there's the 2 guards are going to shake in opposite directions as Franz fills. So this close guard is going to shake all the way down low as this double comes, and the other guard is going to shake to the opposite slot. And there's just no way. Like, this is the kitchen sink of like, oh, you want to send a double? A lot of teams will like move guys along the 3-point line. When they send this double, sure, like he makes the right decision and backs out. But like, think about the communication required to talk through this pairing of actions of slam, low post big, and then both guards shaking in opposite directions. Like, I'm sorry, there's no chance that you're getting consistent results against that. Juwan Howard is going to be such a fun NBA coach when he makes that jump.
Yeah, it's me. I want to like quickly go back and like add to the point you made about like Franz defensive like versatility as a bad thing being overlooked. Like it's the same way that like we talk about like a prospect like LaMelo like needed to go to a situation where he'd be empowered to do stuff and make mistakes and play as a creator. I mean, it definitely works defensively. Just kind of reiterating what you said in a different way, like having a scheme that empowers Franz to play the way he wants to and the way he can off ball and like make mistakes and try things. Because like as perfect as it looks right now, like it's not going to be this perfect right away in the league. Like it can obviously get there, but
for me, I would just like to see him in an offensively messy role where he's put into circumstances like, if you're open, you must shoot. Like, you know, we will steal a pair of socks from you every single day if you don't shoot an open jumper. You know, like these are the things that like NBA life is. It's just like, hey, like that can't happen. And you know, you haze rookies however you need to. Just be like, if you're open rookie, like, you need to shoot. And like getting into such situations where if there's a guard tagging against a big, it's like, make a decision. Don't let them get off. Don't let the defense off the hook with, you know, making something like, we drafted you high. We're here to let you make decisions. You know, like I would appreciate a more experimental coach. That instead of saying like, these are the reads we want you to make, just being like, these are the things that you can't do. Like, absolutely no, you know, open jumpers passed up. Absolutely no there's 4 choices and you pick the safest one. Like, we are going to get you hard on, you know, those habits. To me, those are the developmental situations I'm excited about. Yeah, speaking of just some more real cruel stuff, this is going to be another one of those Spain pick and rolls where there's a hammer for the clear out, which again, like, steal this, I'm telling you. Like, who's supposed to tag on this? Because, like, if you're looking at the responsibilities, if you're defending the hammer, you have to go shot in the hammer. Most teams don't. You don't want to switch a hammer because then the they can either slip or McGetty or whatever. So the teams also don't generally want to switch this action. It's just not like necessarily comfortable because you can just get a hard slam with no help over top. So both of the bigs are going to fight. You know, the back screen's going to fight to get back to Hunter. The drop is going to fight back, and like, it's just a cruel offensive set, which is the best kind, obviously. And this is an automatic read. That's got to go up.
Yeah, it's just another large closeout that's not going to come in the league if this continues.
Yeah, like, if he was a 32% shooter, I would demand he shoot that. And we get another little running hook. Like, again, that's a fine finish. It's just not a finish that, like, is as authoritative or asking as many difficult questions of a team as possible. To me, this is, like, I would say one of the more, like, Franz clips, if we're just, like, picking up bad clips. Like, yeah, it ends in a bucket, but, like, if I were to just say, you know, like, this is fairly representative of where he's at right now, that would be the one. That would be one of the ones I picked up from this game.
He just like picks the ball up so early. Like, if you go back, like, he picks the ball up like right below the free throw line, I believe. Like, take 2 more dribbles. Like, if you're not going to shoot it, at least get into the teeth of the defense. Yeah, like he picks that ball up before he crosses the free throw line. Like, yes, he has the strides to get there, but like against a smaller defender, it doesn't mean he does. Like, it doesn't mean like he's not Xavier Simpson. Like, I know you, like, he thinks he's there, but like you don't have to sweeping hook everyone. Like, you can go through them or over them or around them.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a pretty good job of talking about these throughout. So on the performative defense versus profound defense scale, I think we both read on we would like to see him be a little bit more performative. Like to see, like, he clearly has great understanding of this game. He executes at a hyper technical level, but at times it feels like he's doing the scheme and nothing more. Like, he's not trying to put his own little spin on it. He's just sort of playing the hits. You on the same place. Connector skills. I mean, for me, big thing is recognizing advantage, and sometimes that advantage is him shooting a jumper. To me, that's the thing that clicks everything into place, which segues us nicely to if he shoots at volume. There is not a guarantee that he shoots at volume, regardless of what the percentage says, regardless of his priors. Like, that is the question on which I think his theory as a player hinges, because if he can't get hard closeouts, then, you know, his passing makes less sense. If he doesn't get hard closeouts, then he has to do, like, look in the mirror, you know, take a second thing, and that has very mixed results in the league. Not everybody comes back from that particular experience. Risk aversion versus creation volume. You know, clearly there were a lot of opportunities for him to push the envelope, to make, I would say, reads that are still tilted but are not 100% safe. And I thought that he leaned. I think that he's really far. He's almost like in the Maladon section of risk aversion. Where like Maladon was in a much different environment because he's, you know, playing against pros, and like that's simply a different power dynamic. But like Maladon is very much wired to like just make the right play, and the right play never means throwing a bounce pass through a defender's legs. And like sometimes that is in fact the correct play. It's just not the right answer to like what should you do. And then the last one for me is defending from a disadvantage. I think that it's his best skill. If we're just taking everything, you know, if everybody gets boiled down to that one thing, for me, it's for Franz. I think it's going to translate in the league. It's just a matter of figuring out how much teams want to put him there. Any of these 5 things really jump out to you? Any of them you feel any differently about than when you came in?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, like, very far towards risk aversion. I think the connector skills, like, I do think, like, this is definitely, like, on the lower end of his passing games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think in a lot of the games I've seen, like, he doesn't miss this many reads, and there are fairly high-level flashes for a guy his role. But I definitely do think that, you know, that advantage recognition is an issue. but I think there's enough flashes and enough instances where he does it right to make me like hopeful enough for it.
Can I give you a little bit of a homework assignment?
Me, yeah.
When you watch those games with like the more adventurous passing reads, just take a gander at the score. Because I'm going to guess that like this was a closer game. I picked it because like it's hard to evaluate in blowouts, and like a lot of the games that I thought were representative were also blowouts. Like that I had like 3 or 4 others, you know, just a small peek behind the curtain. I generally like send people a list of like, hey, do you think like this would be a good one to talk about? And like in some of those games, like he made, I would say, uncharacteristically like more dice rolls, and then I'd look at the score and they'd be like up 26. I'm like, well, I mean, it's not that much of a turnover if it's a 4-point swing and a 30 ball.
All right, well, the pick and roll, like the falling out of bounds pass I was referencing earlier, was in the second half of the UCLA game in the tournament, which was 4 points. And then I can remember another, like the Northwestern game, like is maybe one of the best prospect games I've seen this year. And like I think he had a couple passes, and that game was like close throughout. I think, at least definitely beginning. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's, you know, an aspect of maybe from the coaching, it's like, all right, Franz somehow feels like, again, like with the turnover stuff, like it's like, okay, the risk of a turnover is lower now because I'm not going to lose as a result of this turnover, so I can do this stuff. When, you know, the truth is, like, Franz, you're not going to lose because of the turnover anyway, and not losing shouldn't be as much of the goal as it is to you. So
yeah, I will say that I don't think he's missing these reads. I just think that he's doing some damage control on them. Like, to me, he's seeing most of these reads. I think there's
I mean, it's not necessarily missing in terms of like he cannot see and doesn't do them. It's missing in terms of like genuinely not hitting them. Like, even if he can and he knows that he's making a mistake, or he knows that that's an option, like not in the way of, you know, a lot of young players. You know, I'm blanking on one off the top of my head, but like, well, you know, just not see a pass that's pretty glaringly obvious.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say, like that was a Nas Little thing, or like there'd be passes, and you're like, what are we doing here? But he was also, you know, like more of a forward than a guard in his North Carolina year. So, welcome back, everybody. How are we sounding? How are we feeling? How are we doing? Excited to get into these questions. Thank you for everybody who followed during the stream. Thank you to everybody who re-upped Amazon Prime. And thank you, as always, to the Patreon patrons who make all of this possible. There's a lot of equipment that goes into this, and they paid for all of it, and just really thankful every single time. All right, Ben, are you ready to do these screens?
For sure.
All right. So our first question is from Bobby, who says, I think I know what a ghost screen and brush screen are, but what makes them so useful? Why not just do something more like an Iverson cut or set a harder screen? You want me to take this one first?
Sure, you can take this one.
Okay. So with ghost screens and brush screens, what makes them so useful is it allows the defense to flow in one direction. So often with a ghost screen, you're trying to trigger an aggressive coverage, like a hedge or a hard switch or something, and it gets the defense flowing in one direction, and then you're countering really quickly. So it's a way of think of it as sort of like a crossover, but for your offense, where you're just setting up one direction, hitting hard the other, and it usually defenses are in a chain. So or when one rotates, the next rotates. So as the pick and roll coverage gets triggered, and then the help side defenders will step up, and so suddenly you have the offense moving in a new and unexpected direction, and brush screens are that off ball. So that's why it works. It just often sets up a different motion pattern and allows the even when an offense does get into a pick and roll next time, like a regular pick and roll, they're always a little bit worried about the scheme, and so they might miss a little bit. They might in the back of their mind be worried about a ghost screen, so it may not get at you as hard.
It's the same concept as like why slip screens are so effective against switching defenses. I really like the point you made about it being like a defensive crossover, because you're really just countering the momentum of the defense and forcing them to move in a way that is uncomfortable. like, yeah, if you set like, obviously setting a hard screen creates its own kind of advantage, but like a really good screen defender, like if you have like Isaac Okoro or like OG Anunoby, like you don't have to make their movement uncomfortable. Like they can dictate what movement patterns they want. But if you're forcing a switch or hard hedge and you set a ghost screen, like you force them to change directions and alter their movement pattern in a way that they don't want to, and a lot of players might not be capable of. So it's just like a different wrinkle, and it really plays on the way defensive momentum works.
Okay. Kyle MT asks, how would you go about teaching Franz the good, not great shots? Is it running plays with easier reads or encouraging him to shoot more? And how high, easy to reach is his offensive ceiling? I mean, this is the $100 million question. Would you like to take this one first?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we kind of touched on during the first portion of the stream, like you really just have to hammer in that like he needs to shoot and that turnovers aren't bad. Like it really just is a mentality thing, and like I don't know what Franz is being told at the moment or what he has been told, but it's just hammering in like turnovers are not bad. Like you can make mistakes. Like you are allowed to hunt shots that maybe aren't optional in pursuit of something greater, and that greater being increased creation tools. Improve processing in some ways, because there are ways that that those shots that Franz would deem as not as good are just as good, if not better, decisions than the plays he's made, as we touched on many times over and over throughout the stream. So I really think it's like an off-court thing mostly. There might be ways you can encourage that kind of development on the court. I think like just keep giving. I don't really think giving Franz easier reads is the answer, because as we kind of mentioned, and like on that play with like on those plays with the tags, like not giving Franz those challenging reads, he's never going to learn them. So I actually kind of want him continuing to have those difficult reads. Just go into them with the intention of like, I am going to make the tough decision. Like I am going to throw this bounce pass even if I turn the ball over half the time right now. That's the way to approach it from like an off and off on-court situation. And in terms of like how high is and like how easy it is to reach his offensive ceiling, like like that's the question. Like I think like he doesn't really have like any creator offensive upside, obviously. Just like third or fourth offensive player to me, like that's not super specific or anything. Understand that. I think just somewhat like the shooting has to be good, and if the shooting is good, I think there's real upside as a secondary playmaker and off-ball mover. So that's how I'd go about kind of developing Franz in that regard. PD, you want to go now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an infrastructure question for me. It's building in environments where his reads are really reinforced with film. It's really enforced in the small sided practice, in how he's doing his pregame warm-ups. Just like the idea of just reinforcing that like certain things aren't going to be allowed in the same way that it is for every prospect, where some guys are like, hey, we're not letting you take that one dribble pull up going to your right more until you prove that you can make the right decision in these circumstances. It's building an infrastructure that reinforces his risk-taking behaviors by putting him in those situations, both in lineups where he has to make those decisions. If it's some G League minutes, which like I think for a guy like him could be really valuable for small stretches. Even if it's like as I don't want to say as a punishment for being like, hey, you need to go have a 45 usage in Canton or whatever.
It would be a punishment to Franz.
Yeah, I mean like
that's the dream for some guys.
Yeah, some guys are like, sign me up. I can stay here. Like if y'all pay me the same money, like I got no issues. But like it to me, it's a reinforcement thing, more infrastructure. And if you simplify his decisions, I think it averts the central cause, which is that like he needs to recognize when he has the advantage is his own, and when the onus is on him of making a more difficult read. Francis asks, what viability would you give Franz to play small ball 5 in a Sarge-like manner? Even if it's flawed, do you think it would be good development just by giving more perimeter advantages on offense?
I like it. I'd try it. As I've kind of been like harping on, like Franz is huge, and like I think has the like, even if it's like he's gonna be smaller, like I think he has the physicality to make it work. assuming he can add the strength. Like obviously he has the processing and the ability to play in 2-on-1s. I think in that Northwestern game I mentioned earlier, like he has moments where like, he plays the drop perfectly. Like he is playing between the floater and the lob, backpedaling to take away the rim, like making primary blocks, like jumping out of a back pedal. Like he has like legitimate big man tools defensively, combined with this size. Obviously, it's not perfect, and like the rim protection is going to downscale at the NBA level because he's just like, it's harder to protect the rim when you're not like huge, or like really vertically explosive. Like Franz gets off the rim quickly, and he's super great contesting with verticality and his length, but he just can't get that high. So I think that kind of puts a ceiling. But yeah, like I want to see it. Like I'd love to see a team try it.
Do you have a name or a team that you would be interested in seeing try it? Like regardless of, again, I'm big on just like saying the idea and worrying about the viability later. Like if it's Cleveland, it's Cleveland. If it's whatever, wherever. Like again, I've been big on this draft is going to be a wild one. From a trade perspective, so if there is a team, I have one that I think would be fun. I have some questions about long-term feasibility, but I think
what's your thought? Because I don't have one off the top of my head.
How do you feel about Franz Wagner, small ball 5 in New Orleans?
I think it would be cool. I don't know if it's enough, like with Zion and Ingram potentially. I definitely like the idea. Like I think you just want more size, but I think in New Orleans, like Franz like solves other issues, like more pressing issues than small ball 5. Like he can be their one and only wing defender,
and also just another person who like makes good reads, which they do desperately need.
Sure, yeah,
and we can just test that 2 connector theory that we've all wanted to, of like what happens when you have multiple connectors that isn't like on the Spurs team.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good fit for a lot of reasons, and I think like, if the Pelicans can acquire like another wing defender that isn't like Josh Hart, who isn't really a wing anyways, like then they can like experiment with that. I mean, I think that would be cool. I'm just trying to think of other, like there's so many situations where he works like perfectly as like a rangy like team defense 4. Like how great would Franz be next to like Cat in Minnesota? Like you can run like Franz and Jaden.
I don't love it. It's nice because like most guys fit well with Cat. I'm trying to think if there is a one I like more. Like
I'm trying to think. This is what about like the Nets? Like
yeah, but I mean like the Nets have enough weird that you can like figure it out. Like there's a lot of places where you're like that would be really fun. How would you feel about the Wizards?
The Wizards? I just think they probably need more. I mean, they kind of have like the wings theoretically to do it, or at least to try it.
Yeah, I mean, the only other name is that jumps out to me is I think there's a better archetype at play. But like the Charlotte Hornets also could be fun.
Yeah, Hornets is one I thought of. I mean, obviously, like again, like he and LaMelo would be cool.
Yeah, it's just that I think that there is a better fit for them at 11 that solves another one of their like really long-term issues. And I think me and you like both know in our heart that the answer is Jaden Springer. Like honestly, Jaden Springer to the Hornets at 11 is probably one of the best fits in the draft. Like,
I honestly almost quote tweeted a thing with that exact thing earlier today, so you kind of read my mind. But like that, like oh my god, perfect LaMelo compliment. Like it really doesn't get more ideal than that.
Yeah.
This is not a Jaden Springer show, but it can be.
It always could be. So Francis asks, is there a pattern of players playing noticeably younger than their class in college being more passive on average? And I would say almost always yes. And the opposite also exists, where players who have reclassed multiple times or are much older for their grade are usually overly aggressive because they've just had a long-term physical advantage because they're 21-year-old or 20-year-old college freshman, and and those guys are usually more aggressive. Like it's not a universality, but
That's just
often,
terrible.
yeah, it's just that like, if you're younger, you're usually less strong, less physically advanced, and playing in college where the age range is like, from 17 to, I don't know, like isn't there some 26-year-olds next year? Like, there's a massive age range, and with that comes a massive, range of physical development. Physical development is pretty universally tied to like on ball passivity. And if young guys are like really good, it's usually because they've like intellectualized the game and are thinking of it and then processing it while their bodies come around.
Yeah. I don't answer there. So
Brad asks, could a player's frequency of hit-ahead passes be a good shorthand for high field? And does anybody publicly track them?
Not to my awareness in terms of tracking. I don't believe so. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes and no. I think as we talked about, like feel is a very broad term and like has many different applications for many different types of players. Like as we talked about, like I think generally, yeah, like and it depends, like not all hit ahead passes are built equal. Like there's a difference between like a normal hit ahead pass and what Jokic does. But I definitely think like kind of, but I think it's just more indicative to look at what they do in the half court. And like I guess like you argue that hit ahead passes like kind of remove the problem of like functional tools that can inhibit feel. I mean, kinda like I think it definitely is a piece of the high feel puzzle.
So I think Brad is onto something here. I just think that he might be overthinking it. So I think that a good measurement for feel isn't frequency of head-to-head passes. It's how long the ball is in their hands.
Yes.
So
that's
like,
what I'm getting at with the Jokic thing. Like
it's not that like
Suggs is
like how quick the decision is made, and like there are people who are really fast decision makers who are also really bad decision makers. This is like a Bazemore thing when he was like really early in the league. I mean, I watched a lot of Warrior games where he would just like do one more that went to like they were just terribly located. And, like he wasn't making the right decision on the one more, but like he saw advantages, was trying to keep the ball moving. But I think that there is probably a high relationship between the quickness of decision making and feel, just like thinking in broad trends. And I don't think that there is anyone publicly tracking like average time of possession when it comes to passing. But there are people privately doing it, and I think that in the next couple of years, that's going to be like generally public information that people are to start to dig into as like tracking data, just like generally the iceberg, gets a little higher up. Let's see if we have one more.
Francis, another one.
Yeah, we've given enough Francis shine. He can wait a little longer. Okay. Yeah, let's just move on to general draft stuff. Get a couple of good general draft ones, and then we can always come back to Francis. It's not like he's going to be short on awesome questions. Booker and Mitchell are good examples of late round picks who became stars. Who do you think could be that guy in this draft? Neither of us can say Jaden Springer.
Damn it. It's like late lotto picks.
I would just say guys in this draft, because so much is up in the air. Like basically anybody outside. Yeah, I was gonna say out of like the consensus.
Can I say Giddey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Oh, by the way, Giddey got cut from Australia.
No, what?
Yeah, he got left off the 12-man.
That's terrible. But yeah, Giddey's the answer.
If we can get him into that, if Australia has a youth team in that U19 FIBA,
oh god,
I would prefer if he get there immediately.
He's gonna like average 20, 20, and 20.
Wemby's there, so I mean he can. He's gonna do numbers, but that would. I hope for the team. I hope for Team USA that he isn't there because our guards are not great. But I would appreciate it if Giddey showed up to FIBA U19. So Giddey's your answer. Is there a particular like what is the swing skill like? I mean, like Booker and Mitchell became stars for really specific reasons later.
I think with Giddey, like it's just that like there's so many pathways for him to attain star upside like I think like an easy way to envision it is like I think like Giddy can definitely get stronger. Like he already like shows flashes of like using his size and strength to overwhelm, whether it's like off arm bumps into like floaters or face ups where he like puts a small guard in the border with a spin move. Like I could totally imagine him as like a big time wing creator. Maybe he improves his flexibility. Like his handle is not very good. Is not good at the moment. Like the creation isn't perfect at the moment, but I think that there's like a lot to be had there in terms of strength gain. I think the shooting is definitely intriguing with his 3-point attempt rate and how well he's been shooting a shot later in the season, and just the quality of shots, like the difficult pull-ups in mid-range he took at his height and age. Like I'm confident in the shot. Like I said, like handle flexibility improvement, and then the passing is always going to be there. So I just think like there are so many avenues. While obviously acknowledging like there are many ways he could fail and not reach that, like not meet the requisite athleticism threshold, like the shot doesn't hold up. I think like I think you mentioned this on like the lottery stream, or I may make this up. Like there's like a lot more nuance with him than he's just like triple double machine teenager. But I think that like while that's true, I think there are a few guys like with his like legitimate star upside because of just like the tall, like the height and the creation ability, and then obviously like the age and production priors are add on top of it.
Yeah, I think Giddy's a good bet. I'm gonna pick Sharif.
Yeah, I mean that's the other like obvious one, I think.
Yeah, I mean I think that if you were to ask us before the stream, the top three we would both have the three of Springer, Giddy, and Sharif. I mean the bet on Sharif is that he has a superlative skill. He's the best passer in the class, and I would say he's also the best advantage creator in the class.
His slashing craft is hilariously good.
Yeah, just a ludicrous ball handler, and I think that the bet is that in imagining a world where everyone shoots, he probably goes in the top 5.
I think he goes higher than that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to I'm trying to not end up on a screen where someone clips this and says like, this guy said Sharif Cooper should go top 2. It's like, well, that's. Yeah. I mean,
I'm still mildly skeptical of like Sharif more than like. Well, like I still think he's like an obvious like lottery guy, like even if not, and like I think like the Magic should totally take him at like 8 if they can, but like yeah, I mean, I'm just a little more skeptical of the scoring, but like yeah, like the passing is so special. Like it's so ridiculously special. I think like I'd also like I know you are gonna disagree with me, but like I'll throw Keon into that like star potential Horseface, but like he also might get drafted higher than that, so he technically is disqualified.
Yeah, I would say
discussion.
Basically, like I feel like Keon doesn't go outside of the top 10, especially without this lottery fell.
Yeah, I think
like if people keep bold double picks, like Keon's gonna be top 10. Okay. Francis says that NBA.com does have an average touch per second, but it doesn't. But what I was thinking of was touch per second per assist or per passing opportunity, which is not there yet. And obviously, like it's probably either too advanced for current tracking, or is too powerful to be given to us. Yeah. Oh no, I mean it's certainly possible. It's just not the sort of thing that they give fools like me and you and everybody in this chat who would do ungodly things with it. It's just it wouldn't be fair to level the playing field because we'd run all these NBA people out of their gigs, so they gotta keep behind closed doors. You know how it is. Look what we've done with Bart Torvik. They gave us a too powerful tool, and we got D'Anthony Melton proved to be awesome.
Bart Torvik is too powerful.
It's so awesome.
It is a beautiful thing. It is like you can like so easily lose hours on Bart
Crafted my favorite query ever with that Springer one. Like honestly, I've never been happier than when I got that return. Okay, Francis asked, what takeaways from the path from pre-draft Hallie to rookie Hallie do you think affect your thoughts of Franz? You want me to do this one first?
Yeah, I feel like I've been taking them first. You can go for it.
I don't think it's too much. I mean, I think that like I was always very much on the like get Hallie to a situation where he doesn't have to ever like dribble. His dribbling improved more than I thought it would. But I was never like, to me, the lesson of Hallie is like, it's sort of the same, like second contract rather than first contract. And if you can tank your stock to get to a place you know fits you best, you should do that as a prospect. So I think with Franz, I would probably fight some of these drafting situations. Like, I think that there's in the top 10, like 3 spots where I would suggest he not go if like all things were considered, or like some of these teams were to trade out. Um, and like his agency called me. But I think the biggest lesson is that like the fit is going to be super important because I'm a little lower on the conversion rate of his defense, and so like places where he may not get any tick at the 5 or has like a really point of attack heavy role are going to scare me.
Yeah, I just think that I definitely agree. Like, I think Franz is going to be role dependent in a different way because of like the shooting concerns we talked about, or like it's not like as much role development as it is like role dependent. Excuse me, not role development, like role dependent as it is like development dependent. Where I think, yeah, like I also just think like in terms of like thinking about outlier development. Like Halliburton is another reason to like bet on high field guys putting themselves in situations to where they can like have more reps and have more chances to like improve things like their handle and their and like the shot making and other like softer other skills like finishing craft and footwork and their gathers and things like that. Because like if you can put yourself in situation to rep yourself out more than other guys, then you're just gonna progress quicker. Obviously, with Franz, it's like he can get himself in those situations, but it's an issue of just like, will he do it? And I think, I think definitely like it's a different flavor of like the same issue with Hallie. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of my thinking. Like, I don't want to overthink Franz in that regard necessarily.
Okay, let's do a couple of quick hitters. Ray says, I've seen a lot of Kings fans wanting Sengun. I am not one of them. Ignoring the better options that will be available and assuming Bagley and Holmes are gone, what do you think of the Sengun to Sacramento fit?
No.
Yeah, I don't think that is the best fit, especially in a draft that has all of the 4s.
Yeah, I mean,
and all of the 5s next year. Next year has so many interesting 5s.
Yeah,
one of
like
them.
Wait for Nzosa. Like,
yeah. Oh my. I could not imagine what a defense of De'Aaron Fox and the world's best mover is. Like,
we get Fox, Franz, Hallie, and Zosa, please. Like, yeah. We should get like God, Nzosa is so freaking good. I love that.
Nzosa is the only person that makes Mobley look normal.
He is genuinely like 7-foot Josh Green. Like that's how I describe it.
I've seen. I have something. Has he made left-handed layups?
He's a lefty.
Okay, so has he made a right-handed layups? Because like that was the Josh Green thing. I would love to hear any stories that people have about Rick Carlisle.
I can't think of one that Nzosa. It's also been a minute.
Nzosa, I will say, Nzosa, I watched his I think it was like U15 tape, and he had some of the worst hands I've ever seen. Like,
his hands used to be. I think they're better than they used to be.
Yeah, he was growing, but like if you could go back and watch the Stella tape from him, I think it was ANGT, probably U16s, but he was like 14 or 15. And like he was so open on every roll, and they would just throw these like they would throw these passes like below his waist. I'm like, come on, this is a 7-foot 14-year-old. Yeah. Like, what exactly are you asking for him here?
The next year, like when he played with Malaga, like ANGT, like he still had these issues. But like at that point, like he's like physically mature enough to where he can just like overwhelm everyone completely at that level. Like, I mean, like the Josh Green defensively, like he has like the stupidest hips for a guy his size.
Yeah, it's like it's silly.
It doesn't make sense, like the way that guy moves. Like, he is unbelievable. Like, oh my god, he's so good. I cannot wait till it's his draft cycle and we can do all the Nzosa propaganda. Like
oh my god, if Mobley doesn't bring like actual hard hedge back, Nzosa might. Okay, does your only Dragon Bronson asks, does your pre-projection change on AJG as a prospect if he ends up closer to 6'5" than 6'7", and if how so? I would say that I don't think that AJG has any possibility of being 6'5". I think he's very much taller than that. I think he's much closer to 6'7".
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does if he is, but like,
Yeah, he looks way bigger than that on film. He looks like
I mean, he is huge. Like he is like incredibly broad, like strong. No, he definitely looks taller. Like, yeah.
I mean, it would change it. It would also make he has like a 7'1", 7'2" ish wingspan. So if he's like 6'5" and he has that, that's
Taylor Horton Tucker. Like,
yeah. But again, I think he's closer to like a 6'7", 6'8" than he is to 6'5".
Yeah, he's always looked big to me. Like,
but it would basically mean that like he really has to dribble, which was the issue the last time I saw him. Obviously, that was a long time ago, but
yeah, I mean, he can put together some impressive dribble combos,
but it makes the handle need to be more functional.
Yeah,
Darko just got drafted. Nice. Which of the following would be the best pick for San Antonio? Giddey, Cooper, Zaire, Springer, or Kai Jones?
I like Giddey, I think, because I just like have a heart. Like, I just think you want that creation upside. Springer and Cooper are both really good options, though. Like,
I lean Cooper there. Because it's the same. It's the same thing we said about Souza, except instead of De'Aaron Fox, it's Zaire. All of the wings they have, which suddenly makes so much more sense. Like you can do the Keldon Johnson catch and go thing all the time, and then Jakob Pertl will be able to train Yannick Souza in the ability to like be strong at the rim. Like Souza can do a lot of things. He's just not able to hold position right now. That would be a fun team.
I want to quickly mention. Kind of both in the world where there was we did a Twitter mock last week, and I managed to get Giddey and Springer for the Spurs, which I'm very proud of. That I landed both of them, and now we can run Giddey, Springer, Vassell, Keldon, Pirtle lineups, and destroy everybody.
Okay, let's go with. We have 3 more questions, and we'll head out of here. The first one is which prospect would you pair with? Okay, you're New Orleans at 10. What are the best fits? Saying that Zion and Brandon Ingram are 100% on the roster next year.
I want Moody. Moody's the first one that comes to mind. Like, wing defense, some more like pull up 3 creation. I mean, Franz works great as well. Like you said, like it's just kind of like pick your flavor. I think I do think Moody's definitely a better prospect than Franz. I think the same tier, but like Moody's definitely better to me. But like they are like similar level to me, and just like kind of pick your flavor of a really awesome like non-primary wing player. I would love to see like Rocco there, but that's never gonna happen. Like at that range, like I think he makes a lot of sense as like a connecting 4. Mm-hmm. So like not really the rim protection you want next to Zion, I think, but I think you can maybe work around that. I think Moody is my answer, really.
Yeah, I think Moody would be my answer as well. I mean, the thing about New Orleans is it kind of has a very strange profile of what it needs.
Yeah.
Where like I think it needs somebody who on the perimeter can generate advantage and pass and shoot, and there's not really one of those outside. Like the answer is probably Suggs if you're allowed to get everybody. Like Suggs makes the most sense outside of like Cade, because Cade works everywhere.
Yeah.
Bobby, that is what we are finishing out on. We are going to talk about it. I think that you could make an interesting case for Jalen Johnson if you believe in the advantage creation.
Yeah, no, not for me.
Yeah, I understand that that's an interesting case. Like Sharif sort of, but Sharif doesn't bring the shooting, at least initially. Like I think that this is a team that very much needs stability.
I just don't think Sharif is obviously nice, but I don't really think he solves any problem.
He doesn't solve that.
Yeah,
it's a weird. I mean, the answer,
helps, but like
the player I do want most on this team is Raekwon Gray, because then we can have bouncy Zion and
Zion and athleticism raised after Zion.
Yeah, and they would just be awesome. I think Rocco is a really interesting answer. I could also see somebody like Kessler would be interesting. Bones Highland. If you want to train that.
Bones. I don't know if he brings like the passing you want, but like
he'll generate an advantage though.
Shooting plus rim pressure, like almost nobody in the class does it like he does, like Jalen Green.
I mean, if you compare Bones uh, and Zoe, like that's a functional backcourt.
Yeah. How many better shooting plus rim protection guys are there?
There's not.
Shooting
There's
plus
not.
rim pressure guys are there in this class? Like
It's just not.
like maybe Jalen Green. You can make an argument for.
Yeah, but you
like,
also but Jalen's more body stable. Like
Yeah.
Bones is going to have some of those issues, and that's why having somebody with Zion or like Zoe makes a lot of sense.
That's why Bones is like could go in the lottery.
Okay, you talked about waiting for 4 or 5s until next year. Which archetype would you take this year that is scarce next year? I need to answer this first. There is basically one like great point guard or like very good point guard in next year's draft, which is Jean Montero, who plays for Overtime Elite.
Montero.
And after that, it is really scarce in the guard division. Like you have people like Ty Washington who are like solid guards, but outside of Montero, I don't know how many people would be first rounders in
You don't
this
like
draft.
Kennedy Chandler, right?
No, to me that like Kennedy Chandler is going to be an NBA player, but I think that he'll probably get drafted in like the second round if the shooting comes around. But like that's not an archetype I'm particularly interested in.
He's very small.
Yeah, he's small. Is not like super free throw heavy. Like those are just for me for point guard. Right, but you have to either live in the rim. You either have to live at the rim, get fouled a ton, be an otherworldly passer, or like just have Bones Island level shooting to be that small in my book. For
Bones has 2 of them.
Yeah, and he's also an off guard.
So good.
So yeah, point guard. If you have any guard dads, you're playing a very dangerous game. There are wings who handle the ball next year. There's a lot of like interesting archetypes, but if you are in like need for a point guard specifically, the one needs like this year has a lot of interesting ones. Next year is pretty.
Yeah.
God, Carmelo's so skinny.
Montero is so good.
Yeah, Montero's really fun. Okay. Our second to last question: which non-dribble proficient prospect has the best indicators of a ball handler in this year's draft?
That's a good question. I'll let you take it first. I want to think.
This is a tough one. Just real quick, Ward, I'm out on Salas, and to me, Kadari is like a wing who can dribble. But like if we're considering, when I watched Salas's games, Salas was not the prospect I came away super impressed with.
I also don't like Salas.
I think he's a 2.
Just not as easy as it needs to be for him. Like, St. Thomas is cool though.
I'm a huge St. Thomas is the player I came away.
He's really good. I think he's
if he could dribble, when he learns how to dribble, he's going to be a monster.
Okay, best guy who can't dribble, who might be able to dribble in the future. That's hard. Which is why I'm going to make you go first. I have my answer, I think, but
this is a difficult one because like we kind of have to consider like what dribbling, like how we're defining dribbling. Like if we're talking about like to go from like a mediocre handle to like a really.
And it depends on role too.
Yeah.
Like, I think like I like to think of this in terms of like the athletic tools that unlock ball handling, in terms of like agility, flexibility, ankle mobility, things like that. So I'm gonna say Kai Jones, also because he's starting at like a 0 baseline, like from like a non-dribbler to someone who like I think he can get to like decently above average for position. I don't love that answer though. It's the first one that came to mind. I think like Springer kind of like I think Springer's gonna be a very good, like a pretty dang good handler, because of those like same requisite athletic tools.
Yeah, for me it's BJ.
This is a tough one.
It's BJ. BJ has like a lot of what I would consider are like ball handler indicators. He's also like really skinny. He has really high hips. He's really inflexible, and I think the NBA is going to solve 2 of those 3. And he has enough of the shooting off the dribble that he'll be able to sell it. So like to me, that's the best bet for like a guy. I would say like can dribble a little bit, but like can't be functional dribbling.
I suppose. I mean, I'm very out on BJ in general.
Yeah, but I mean that is a physical.
He can kind of dribble too much, like for me, really. Like at this point, like it has his issues, but like he's like too good at it at the moment. I mean, yes, he is a good problem, but yeah.
Okay. And now we are going to get into it. This will, I don't know. Like I'm still trying to plan out the rest of my time. So let's get deep on the question for the question for our age. Moody versus Franz. Um, I believe the exact question was phrased as who's better, or let me see if it was how is Moody a better prospect than Franz? Whichever side you'll take, I'll take the opposite. I think you know which one I would prefer as the leader of the Moody Mafia. But
I think we're both on the Moody side. I mean, I can.
Yeah,
I
can you just do the Socratic method?
Yeah, I can play Franz defender if you want me to.
Yeah, just knock that out. Make the Franz case, and I'll just do the Moody one.
Yes, I will. Begrudgingly, I shall. Because Moody is better. Me or you
you go first, and I will.
Oh, I mean, I think the case for Franz is, I think Franz is kind of like, you can argue that he's kind of like a different level of defender, assuming he hits that ceiling. I know you're lower on the conversion rate of the defense, but as someone like me who is not, who is not as low as you, I think that defense from Franz, like just defensive versatility, while also having, I think, assuming he lands in his ideal scenario where he's empowered to do stuff off the ball and play in those 1v2s, and then he's able to add strength and plays more, plays better off on the ball in terms of dictating against great creators. Like there's like a total all league defender in this class, like a total all league defender there, like maybe even better than that. And then offensively, I think it's just like about him having more low hanging fruit than Moody in terms of development, like in terms of shooting stuff there. Some of the way he approaches his slashing stuff. It's going to be a question of like how much you can rep it out. And like I'm struggling to make this case because I think Moody is very clearly better offensively, at least.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
it's a tough case to make. I think like Franz definitely flashes more passing. I think that the connecting ceiling is higher, definitely. But like I'm not trying to make your case for you. Yeah, I think that's where aligns with Franz. Like Franz also like just like the shooting and size, could potentially lend to some upside. Yeah, I think like that's the argument lies is like if you're really buying Franz is like that dude on defense with like enough of the shooting offensively. But yeah, like I don't really agree with what I said, but like I understand why someone would make that argument, and like I have them in the same tier. I definitely understand that argument. But PD, you want to make the good one now?
Yeah. Moody has a like +8.5, wingspan and measured in like 7.75. Yeah, around 8.25. He has like I would say really low hanging fruit in terms of how his body should be composed, which is just like more core stability.
Yeah.
He might be the best 4-point play gatherer since Jamal Crawford.
It's so uncanny. It's really crazy.
He is the rare like guy who's not heavy, who is better suited to guard stronger players. His biggest issue was, at least in his tape that I've seen, is that Moody is best on strength-based creators. It's like his issue is when you put him on like super quick ones. It's like that's where he gets uncomfortable, like that super close point of attack. But like his thing is that he wants people who try to fight him, and then he uses his long arms and the ability to like skinny his way through their handle. Like I would feel
sneakily strong.
Yeah, he's super strong. He's just not.
Yeah, but like
he's just not core stable.
He's functionally strong, like in the upper body, which really helps him there.
Yep.
Against stronger guys.
Yeah, it's just the core stability. It's the balance. The thing that we know about Moody that we do not know about Franz is Moody will get shots up.
Yeah.
Always get shots up. He is a ball mover. He's not
Moody. Yes, sir.
He is a ball mover. Like I don't think he processes the game poorly. I don't think he's a guarantee to like run pick and roll. I also don't think you need him to ever run pick and roll. Like
no.
I mean like I think that like there are versions of him that are sort of like the Covington archetype, where he just like does like just catch and shoots and tries to dunk, and like I think that there are pathways for him to be a fine offensive player on that if the handling never gets better, if the ball like he's obviously like only just turned 19 and playing I would say fairly out of role, put up good numbers. Like
Yeah.
for
I mean,
for the archetype,
it's
for
not.
the archetype,
It's certainly not role perfect. Like
it's not role perfect, and he showed growth in a role that I would say he agreed to. Like he agreed to be more usage heavy than he probably should be, and he did like pretty well. He runs still a little bit hot and cold, but the two things that I know for certain is he will get shots up and he will get fouled, and he can defend
such a good.
I think he can defend 2 through 4 pretty easily.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, definitely better like leaning up on that scale.
Yeah.
But like most like non like Levine or like Booker twos.
Oh, see, I don't think Booker would be an issue for him. The issue is like Shea is the person who you got to keep him far away from.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think with Moody, something that's like so interesting to me and like what I love about his development is like the versatility of roles he's played in. I mean, like I think like what he wants to do is like the Montverde thing, where he just like sits in the corner and makes like wacky rotations all the time, and it's obviously great there. But like I mentioned, like Brad Beal Elite Moody like was a creator.
Yeah.
Like Moody obviously isn't a creator prospect, but he can do it in smaller stats. Like his strength based creation on like pull ups, foul draws, drive like was really good in UABL. Obviously, like that's not like something you bank on translating, but I think he's a better shot creator than he gets credit for. And like you said, like that's where the big difference is with Franz to me.
I think there's more fits for Moody. That is also like one of the most important.
He does like little things so well too, like about like the Montverde wing off the catch footwork thing is like just like god tier.
Yeah.
Like he's so good attacking off of the catch, like little footwork for his finishes, like using his length and extension to finish. And to answer like Jax's question, like yes, I definitely do believe in Moody's offenses. Like maybe not meaningful by way of like real primary creation, but like it definitely I think matters when Moody's obviously drawing closeouts. That's clear.
That is the hilarious irony of Moody is that his catch and shoot threes are foul drawing craft. Like he's the only prospect who like is working on grifting when shooting jumpers, which is a thing I love. I think that when Francis says like Moody would struggle attaching with Booker off ball, he would have issue being run through like the JJ Redick style weave stuff. But I just mean like at point of attack, he would have no issue with like Booker's wanting to like elbow shoulder, I think that the other like the main like demerits against Moody is like if you split up his like at the rim stuff between like when he is on ball and when he's off ball, he's much worse when he's on ball. The beauty is like you just simply don't have him be on ball.
Don't make him like don't have him like rim attempt on the ball. Like I don't even think that like it's like I think it can get good enough because like he's so good with like his like stops and like 2-foot stops into short pull ups. And little floaters, and like you said, like the foul drawing craft is very legit.
Especially when teams close out hard and he has side steps, because
they will. He is like he forces a closeout, and like maybe maybe like a point Jackson's kind of getting at. Like against a set defense, the foul drawing craft isn't as as enabled. But like if you have a guy like a guy coming in rotation on a tilted defense, like Moses Moon is going to draw a foul every time.
Yeah, I mean, like, the idea is sort of like, what if Gary Harris had a 50 free throw rate? Like, which is like he had a 40. Yeah, I do not think Cam has some of the specific grifts that Moody does because like it's partially from his legs just being super long and being able to flare them out. I don't think that like Moody
Rocco's a hell of a grifter too. I love to see that one.
Yeah. I think that like the thing that is meaningful with Moody is that like he's never gonna have to put on like super real weight. Like he's already really, really strong. And like because that's the strength based creators. The thing that I'm most worried about is not his strength level, it's how much mobility can you get him to guard like 1.5s? Like can you put him on combos? Because if you can put him on combos, like this is a whole different ballgame. And that mobility stuff is so much more valuable to me. Like will the foul craft transfer? Like is he gonna be a 50% free throw rate guy? Like no, but like if 80% of that transfers, that's still like insane free. Like it's not that he's like the
for his role as well.
Yeah, for his role, he basically has the best free throw rate. Like there's basically never been an off ball like dribble pass or the closeout attacker who's at a 50, like anything close to this. And I don't think that Arkansas system like really enabled the foul craft in some like meaningful heuristic way. So to me, Moody presents like I don't think he's like I think that there's a lot of like pretty low hanging fruit, and that his issues are so specifically easily hidden by the game. And like I said in my Moody piece that I wrote, when the pandemic started, when the pandemic started, like the case for him being like a top 7, top 5 guy is that like his perfect situation is the one that the NBA finds itself in. It's like if your team has a guy but doesn't have the building pieces, he's the second piece that you'd really want. It's like once you have a guy, the next thing you do is you put him there. Like, where I really love Moses Moody? Sacramento.
That would be very nice.
Because imagine if you like close out. Imagine if like De'Aaron or Hallie like gets any kind of separation. Like
how about Moody in Memphis?
Okay, I get that. I just.
I mean, I'm kind of overkill, but like.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think Memphis has some like Memphis needs a guy who can create small spaces because they have a lot of big space guys like Jaren and Ja. But like, what happens when things get a little bit tighter? I think they want a different body type.
Yeah, Magic draft Sharif and Moody challenge.
Yeah, sure. I can see that. I mean, welcome to the Moses Moody stream. We're doing this back to back. Yeah, I think that
secretly.
I honestly like I don't think people understand how much time this stuff takes. Couldn't if I did 2 of these for 2 different prospects in like the same 3-day period, it takes like 15 to 20 hours for each stream probably, if not longer. I think that Moody's team building perspective is the thing that is the truest separator. Because like it is so much easier to team build around Moody in a way that is synergistic than it is for like most other people. Like most other prospects in his class is like, oh yeah, you get a primary creator, but like, do you know what helps a primary creator a lot? If your secondary can draw a bunch of fouls, because that means the teams can't be physical with your primary, and it creates a loop of like certain coverages just do not work. Like you could not. You could if the Clippers legend, Central Michigan's very own Chris Kaman. I think that Moody's pathways to like extreme offensive value without like a real playmaking boost are, I don't want to say unprecedented, but like close.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to plug? Is there any polls you would like people to participate in? Is there any places you'd like them to follow you?
No, there's not.
Okay.
No, I mean honestly, like you can like go vote in my Instagram poll if you want to, but like really, like I don't have anything to plug at this point. Like,
okay.
I'm not really doing like serious content.
Wow, that's very harmful to the 2.5 hours you put into this stream. Wow.
Besides, non-guested content, like aside from my like little voice notes that are pretty low effort, but I enjoy doing them. So I mean, just like follow me on Twitter. I'll be tweeting. Make sure you follow PD on everything and support him because he is lovely and wonderful for setting these up and inviting people on here. It is truly a blast, and I'm thankful that PD invited me to come join the show. But yeah.
Honored to have you. I think that this stealth Moody stream went great. As David Stern gets booed, as the Bulls select accessory god Kurt Heinrich. Took all the sliders up to 12. Reggie Jackson's forefather stylistically. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who stuck around. This one's a little bit longer. I'm really trying to keep this under 2, But you know, anytime to talk about Moses Moody and the comparative value of wings who attack on off ball is something I can be suckered into talking about for 2.5 hours. I would suggest that if you wanted to learn more about Evan Mobley, say you watched a stream from an unknown Twitch or YouTube channel, and you're like, I want to know more. You know, maybe a different perspective. You can actually find Ben Pfeifer doing some of those. Would you like to plug that real quick?
Yeah, it's a good point. I did talk about Mobley on our pal Sam Folk's Raptors Republic pod. We spent like a little over an hour waxing poetic on all things Evan Mobley. You know, I think definitely not just like obviously like Raptors specific in terms of fit and things like that and actions, but obviously I think it applies broadly to Mobley as a whole. So yeah, that was fun. Felt very Prep to Pro-esque in just its construction. It was a really good time. So yeah, go check me out on that podcast. That was a fun one. So.
Okay, well, I think this does it for the Big Ten. Just one prospect.
The only one.
For the yeah, I mean,
the really relevant ones, like
yeah, I mean, in a perfect world where I had a production team, I could
months.
Yeah, a little more time. I think we could get a little bit more, but unfortunately, kind of got to keep moving. If you could watch the videos on YouTube, if you could subscribe, that'd be wonderful. If you have any extra money laying around, $5 on Patreon goes a long way to afford the video and stats packages I use to build streams like these and the writing content that I've been trying to get out a little bit more. I should have Kessler out in the next couple of days.
Very exciting.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, Kessler's really fun. Just want to say thank you to everybody who has supported. I want to say thank you for everybody who stuck around live. I do try to get these relatively on time. Sometimes technology doesn't cooperate, but it is what it is. I just want to say thank you to everybody who supports me. Thank you to everybody who joins in, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.